Eyewitness News. This is extended coverage of Campaign 2024 Election Night.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our special election extended coverage right here on the Wax and streaming on WFSB Plus and our app. I'm Kara Sundland. Tonight, we are your election authority, focusing on the local races that really impact you. And I am joined by our esteemed panel of political analysts. We're excited about this. First, we have a Democrat, Jimmy Tickey, and he is the vice chair of the Democratic Party. Thank you so much for being here. And then Republican, Themis Claridis, an attorney and, of course, former House Minority Leader from 2015 to 2021, the highest ranking woman in the legislature that time. And we have columnist and senior editor at CT Insider, Dan Haar. Thank you all for being here. We're going to have a robust conversation. We also have team coverage all over our state, watching individual races and hearing from you, the voter, about the issues you have been facing. Stephanie Simoni is debuting some new election technology. She's going to show us the presidential race and the balance of power in Congress. Now, right now, we are going to be getting an update from the Secretary of the State because the polls just closed 1 minute and 22 seconds ago. I'll check in with our producer, Katie. Is she ready to go?
That is causing.
All right, let's listen to what she has to say.
In some towns, so although the polls are closed, anyone in line at 8 p.m. can still vote. So I know in places like Stamford and Hartford, there are still some people in line trying to cast their ballot. Another thing that people have been asking us a lot of questions about is the situation in North Stonington. So I'd like to clarify a few things. There were 1,144 ballot envelopes that were potentially left unsigned due to incorrect instructions by the registrars of voters. No one knows how many of those ballots were impacted, but almost certainly not all of them, because it was only if the voter asked explicitly, "Should I sign this?" that they were given the incorrect instruction. But because they had to be kept under seal until Election Day, no one knew the size of the problem, so they decided to contact all potentially impacted voters. So since that time, 984 of them have returned, cast their ballot with a signed envelope. And we think some of the ones who didn't come back didn't do so because they knew they had signed it. They would have known the exact figure, but there was a potential for a lawsuit. So they were told to keep those ballots sequestered and under seal. We still haven't heard definitively one way or another if there will be a lawsuit, but I do believe they were able to take them out of the sequester and start looking at them. So we haven't gotten a final figure yet of how many people's votes might not count in that situation. The other situation people have been asking us about is what happens now. As I mentioned, there are still a huge number of people trying to use same-day registration. So many towns are concerned about getting the count done in a timely manner. Initial results are due from the tabulator counts at 11:59 p.m. tonight. Many towns expect their counting will have to go through the night into tomorrow. I'm not a betting woman, but if I were, I would say we'll be looking at seeing more complete results by the end of day tomorrow. Because early voting was so successful, despite having extra staff, extra machines, towns between the early voting, the absentee ballots, and all the same-day registration people, they are just having a challenge keeping up with that volume. I encourage anyone who wants to follow along, they can go to our website into the election management system, and they can see in real time as that data is updated, and the website very clearly denotes how many precincts are reporting, so members of the public will have a pretty good sense of what results have been reported. The registrars, the town clerks, and the head moderator will confirm results by 9 a.m. on Friday, November 8th. That is when tabulated and any hand-counted ballot counts are due. That is also the last day to inform any town if a recount is necessary because it's too close. And November 12th is the last day for any recounts to actually take place. And then lastly, I'd like to just remind members of the public that after the election, after tonight, into the next weeks, it is very likely that we will continue to see misinformation and disinformation circulating on social media. According to our latest briefings, foreign actors, in particular Russia and Iran, are expected to continue efforts to cause election disruption after the polls close tonight. Before sharing information, I encourage all members of the public to always go to trusted sources such as our website or your town's website for reliable information about the election. The public is our best partner in fighting all the misinformation that we've already seen circulating. And I just want to really thank, I think we've been hearing stories from other states, and I think a big part of today's success in Connecticut is because of the
we're just going to break in right now. I know you're
strong
listening to the
partnership.
Secretary of the State, but we have some breaking news from the Associated Press, which has now just called Connecticut for Vice President Kamala Harris. So we're just getting that word into the newsroom right now. Connecticut has been called, and it goes to, no surprise, to Kamala Harris. I am joined by our panelists here, and we want to take a moment and just talk about what's happening. We're just listening to the Secretary of the State, which thankfully not a lot going on that is going to create a lot of news tomorrow. At the moment, she says she's just checking out things. We're not going to know until tomorrow midday or later because of all that needs to be counted, although the AP has projected at least this date for Kamala Harris. So I want to start with you, Themis, as we look ahead to your, as you see out onto Connecticut and how things may shift or not from a Republican perspective, what are you seeing tonight?
Well, I think when we look at the State House and the State Senate, there's a couple races in each that Republicans and Democrats are focusing on. And I think that there could be a shift in the Senate. I think in the House there could be some wins and some losses that may not change the overall bottom line. But I think to your point, it depends on how much Kamala Harris wins Connecticut that will affect the congressional races, particularly the 5th Congressional District.
And Jimmy Tickey, what say you as you look out and you're watching some of the tighter races and what Democrats may be feeling tonight?
Yes, well, I'm very pleased that Kamala Harris won the state of Connecticut. I know that may not come as a total surprise. We are regarded as a blue state with national elections, but it's thrilling to see that Kamala Harris won the state tonight, and hopefully she will have a good night overall across the country. We feel good about our candidates across the state of Connecticut in the State House and the State Senate, but there are some areas where we know that there are Trump voters, particularly in the Naugatuck Valley, where I'm from, as well as Themis, and throughout the Torrington area. And I'll be interested to see how we do in communities where we know that there are voters out there who did vote for former President Trump. And I'm interested to see how the Democratic candidates do on the ballot.
Dan Haar, I know you're going to have a lot to say, but first we need to go out to one of our reporters. Dan Haar is, of course, joining me as an analyst here, and he has lots to say from CT Insider and what we're going to be seeing tonight. But I want to get out live right now to Channel 3's Amanda Callahan, joining us from a polling location in Torrington. Amanda, I know you were there earlier because there have been some issues with the polling tabulators. Fortunately, nothing that I guess the state can't handle. But how are things right now, and how have things progressed with this issue?
Well, that's right, Kara, here at the Armory in Torrington. Earlier on today, it was the issue with the tabulator. That's the machine that actually counts the ballots. But then they had another issue pop up just a few hours ago, and that was with the actual ballots. The machine was showing an error for the ballots. The registrar told me that they checked it, and it was the correct ballots for District 6, but they weren't going in. So they had to use that side auxiliary box to place the ballots in. But it seems like once they opened up a new pack of ballots, things are running smoothly. But take a look behind me. Obviously, we know the polls are closed now. It's after 8 o'clock, but we know that the state law is if you are in line before or by 8 o'clock, you are required by law to have your vote count. So these people are here in the Armory in Torrington waiting to cast their ballots, and the line is moving smoothly, so it seems like those issues have been resolved once they got that new packet of ballots. We have been keeping track of the issues here in Torrington, so it hasn't been an easy day for them, but luckily things seem to be moving smoothly, and hopefully within a few minutes this line should be cleared out and everyone's ballots will be cast. But we'll be keeping an eye on it for you on air and online, of course, throughout the night. But for now, live in Torrington, Amanda Callahan, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Amanda, thank you. We'll continue to monitor any polling issues, but we do have more breaking news where the Associated Press has made another call here in Connecticut, and that is that Senator Chris Murphy, the incumbent, will keep his seat. I know as you look right now, it shows 0% reporting, but we are getting the call from the Associated Press, which often happens when the races are not very close. So far we have a call that Connecticut is going to Kamala Harris and Chris Murphy. I want to bring in Brian Chapman, the host of Brian and Company on WTIC Radio. He's currently doing election night radio broadcasting. Where are you coming to us from, Brian, and what say you about these early calls?
Yeah, well, first of all, Kara, good evening. I'm actually outside the studio. I took this block off. They're talking right there as we speak. Two of our other hosts and our news director, Morgan Cunningham. We've crossed it out. We've talked to people in Pennsylvania, people in Nevada. We've gone to Howard University where the Harris headquarters are. And, right now in terms of voting, I mean, listen, a bunch of states just closed at 8 o'clock. And so things are going to start to get interesting nationally. And one conversation we're having is that a lot of people think that Trump's not going to win Connecticut, but some people think he's trending better than he did in 2020 against Biden. And then the focus becomes the 5th district. Will there be any down ballot help in that regard for George Logan? It seems that the Jahana Hayes reelection bid is relatively confident, but if Trump did better than expected in Connecticut, that would mean two things. It would be one is maybe it makes it closer for Logan and Hayes, and number two, is that a harbinger for things happening nationally? So even though we consider ourselves not that relevant in terms of national presidential politics, that's something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, and that'll be the key as we watch people come out, whatever exit polling there may be or who showed up. We've been hearing record voting, record turnout, so we'll see who those people are that actually turned out. Brian Chapman, I know we'll get to check in with you again. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Speaking of the presidential race, as we await results from a number of key states, all eyes are certainly on the presidential candidates on this historic election day. Channel 3's senior national correspondent Peter Zampa is in Palm Beach, Florida. That is where former President Trump voted today, also where his campaign is holding his election night party. Peter, set the scene for us there in South Florida.
Well, let me start with this. All states are key states, including the state of Connecticut. I think we all can agree. As far as the scene here, the energy starting to pick up as we get some of these race calls, as the polls close every hour or half hour. Now, for a long time, it was largely just folks like you and me, journalists, just dozens and dozens of us all around here waiting for hours to get in, finally getting in, the anticipation building, and we're finally here for this watch night party. The crowd, a few of them, a few dozen have been up there near that stage for a number of hours. They've got a long night ahead of them, but the energy is still palpable in here.
And what has the former president been doing today, given that we know he said he had his very last rally yesterday? What's the mood been like for the president today?
Well, the campaign told me he's been in good spirits all day. He voted in person here in Palm Beach. He took some questions from some reporters afterward on an array of topics. Then he went to visit a campaign headquarters site to talk to his staff, to thank them for their hard work. And then the campaign told me he was actually making get out the vote calls for a while there, whether it be at Mar-a-Lago or that campaign headquarters. Every last second counts, I suppose, for this Trump campaign. And then this evening, before he comes here to address these supporters, he's watching the returns file in at Mar-a-Lago with his entire family, a bunch of friends, and senior staff from his campaign.
I know that you've been in touch with the Trump campaign, and I also know this is on the mind of a lot of people, of what will former President Trump do tonight. Do you have any news of he will declare victory regardless of perhaps what the AP or other networks are saying or what the returns are telling us?
Well, he was asked that question today. He sort of dodged it. I put that question to the Trump campaign today. They sort of dodged it because they don't like to speak in hypotheticals when you're on election day. They like to think that this is their race to lose, that they will be victorious tonight. No need for any premature election calls or election victory calls from this former president. But we know what he's done in the past, and we know what he's been saying throughout this election cycle, sowing doubt in this election. Even today, sending out a social media post calling into question what's going on in the crucial city of Philadelphia. So the narrative is there. He's been laying the groundwork to sow doubt in this election. So do not be surprised if he repeats 2020, prematurely claiming victory in this race.
Peter Zampa, our senior national correspondent, thank you. And I know we'll be getting an update from the Harris campaign coming up in the next half hour. Thanks for being with us. I want to shift out now to the congressional race that has a lot of eyes on it in our state, getting a lot of national attention. It's the 5th District rematch between Representative Jahana Hayes and Republican challenger George Logan. Channel 3's Susan Raff is live there. She is focusing on Hayes and her campaign. We just heard that there, perhaps from Brian Shackman, that if more people are starting to vote for Trump than they did in 2020, that could affect this race.
Kara, it's really hard to tell right now. As you know, this was a very close race 2 years ago between Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and George Logan. Will it be close again? That really remains to be seen. But I think a key issue for this race certainly is reproductive rights, which is very important for women and people all across this country. And Jahana Hayes has been very strong about that. So I think if that is an issue that's going to energize or make some voters loyal to her, that is it. But keep in mind, the race 2 years ago was very, very tight. Now, some are expecting that this could be an early night. Some people are not exactly convinced of that. We've seen some victories already. Senator Chris Murphy has been declared the winner. But again, this is an important race. It's hot for two reasons. One, because it was so close 2 years ago, but also nationally it is very important because Democrats need 4 seats in order to take control of the House of Representatives. And if that happens, they will take back the gavel. We caught up with Jahana Hayes on the campaign trail today. She was voting early in this morning in her hometown of Wolcott. She has been very positive throughout this campaign, but says she doesn't want to take anything for granted. She knows how these elections are. This is her 4th term that she is seeking. So the big question is tonight, is she going to pull off a victory? Are we going to see another close race? This is one race that we definitely want to be paying close attention to. So we're going to throw it back to you for now, and we will bring you updates, obviously, as the night progresses. We are live in Waterbury. Susan Raff, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Susan, thank you. Coming to us from the Brass City, Republican George Logan is running against Representative Jahana Hayes, and Channel 3's Matt McFarland is live to give us an update from that view of the race. Matt?
Hi there, Kara. Well, George Logan was here in New Britain at St. Francis of Assisi Church, his last stop of the night as he was making his way across the district. He was here with New Britain Mayor Aaron Stewart, talking with voters, talking with volunteers. As you heard Susan say, 2 years ago, razor-thin margin right there. We're talking about roughly 2,000 votes separating the two. So the issue is what's going to happen in this rematch. Logan says it's simple. His campaign is saying it's basically, do you want more of the same or do you want change? He's been focusing on issues sort of like inflation, the economy, jobs, the southern border. Well, you heard Susan say for Jahana Hayes, it was more of women's rights as well. So it will be interesting to see what happens. George Logan said he was feeling good, feeling confident, feeling excited, but he says now it's going to come down to counting the votes and to see where they shake out. One thing to point out, traditionally, campaigns always have that election night watch party with their volunteers, their campaign volunteers, and their supporters. Logan decided not to do that this year. He said, telling Eyewitness News earlier this week, that he would celebrate when they have a victory. So will it be Logan? Will it be Hayes? And just when will we know that tonight? That is the big question. But for now, though, we're live in New Britain. Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Matt McFarland, thank you. Certainly a race we're all watching. I want to bring in our panelists now. And Dan, I want to start with you since you didn't get to speak to us the first time. But as we look at it, Connecticut, certainly the 5th District is one that's gotten the most national attention, although I do know some of the Republican funding was pulled in recent weeks.
Yeah, the $600,000, that was a blow to the campaign, but it wasn't entirely, I don't think that's a mortal blow. It's, look, they have money. and they have to move it around, and it doesn't mean they think he's going to lose. It means maybe they think he's going to win. You know, you don't know. I think that's a stretch, but the point is that I think the Democrats have been portraying that move as the death knell of Logan's campaign, and that's certainly, I was in the Fifth all day today, and that's certainly not what I saw. I saw some Harris voters who were voting for Logan. So a lot of ticket splitters. So, you know, you can count on that. It's not a, I think these guys, Themis and Jimmy will agree, there's a lot of ticket splitters out there. So anything can happen in a race like that. I think she has the advantage, but it doesn't mean the death knell.
All right, we've got to get to something else, but just, you agree, ticket splitters? You think that's going to be a theme?
Connecticut is a big ticket splitter state because, you know, there's higher Democrat registration, but there's almost 50% unaffiliated voters, and people vote for the person more than not.
Okay.
There can be ticket splitters, but the ground game that Jahana Hayes had throughout this entire campaign was pretty impressive. The amount of volunteers that came out for her, especially in the last several weeks and months. So I do feel pretty good about her prospects tonight and the operation that they had really owning the ground across the 5th Congressional District.
Okay, our team coverage continues now because Channel 3 is your campaign 2024 election authority. I hope you're enjoying your election party and streaming us so we can give you all the information. Channel 3's Stephanie Simoni is at the campaign 2024 desk for an update, debuting our very cool new technology, Steph.
Yes, Kara, this is the map, right? 270, that's what they need. That is the number they need. Right now, Donald Trump has 95. Vice President Harris has 35. Of course, it is still early, and you can see the East Coast is starting to fill in. Let's take a look at some of those key battleground states. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral college votes. Right now, only 7% votes are in, and you can see a lot of them are the cities. And so right now, it appears that the vice president is doing very well in Pennsylvania, but of course, there is still a lot to talk about and a lot of time, a lot of votes to come in. But right now, with only 7% of the votes, she's doing very well in Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at Georgia right now, a battleground state where Donald Trump is doing very well right now. He's got 1.3 million votes, and then, of course, Harris at 1.1 million votes, but 46%, so this has filled in more. 46% of people are voting in Georgia, so it looks like we might be getting some more numbers out of Georgia. All right. Let's go to back to Kara now. Of course, these numbers are constantly changing. I also want to mention in the Senate, Jim Justice picked up a seat in the Senate for West Virginia. So initially, that's Manchin's old seat, an independent. Now it has flipped to Republican. That means Republicans need one more seat to gain control of the Senate, Kara. A lot to talk about, and we will keep it here, right here, watching this map. Kara, back to you.
All right, Stephanie. Thank you very much, and we're going to continue to bring you updated live local information on Connecticut. We'll be right back.
Eyewitness News. This is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
Day 26 right now on election night. Thanks for continuing with us here on Channel 3. I'm Mark Zinni.
And I'm Erin Connolly. The polls just closed at 8 o'clock about 26 minutes ago. We continue to follow many of the key races right here in Connecticut.
Yeah, and one of the biggest ones everybody's been watching for quite some time is the hotly contested race for the 5th Congressional District between Jahana Hayes and George Logan.
It was very close last time. We'll see what happens tonight. Channel 3's chief political reporter Susan Raff has been following Congresswoman Hayes all day. She is joining us now live with the latest. Susan.
Erin, good evening. There is no question that this is a hot race, and really for two big reasons. One, it is a rematch between Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and Republican challenger George Logan. It was so close 2 years ago that Logan only lost by about 2,000 votes. But it's also a race that has captured national attention, and Democrats all over the country want to get 4 more seats. If they get back 4 seats in the House of Representatives, then they will have the majority in the House. So this is definitely a hot race, and we saw a lot of people at the polls today, and it's really interesting because despite early voting, which was hugely successful in Connecticut, a lot of people feel that way. More than 700,000 people voted early, but there were a lot of people who went to the polls today. We had a chance to speak to them. They told us that they felt it was important to cast their ballot in person on Election Day. We also asked voters if they think that this time around, if this race will be as close. Some feel that it will not be, and mainly because of reproductive rights, which has become a very important issue, not just in this congressional race, but also obviously in the presidential race. We could see an early night here tonight, but it's really unclear at this point. We did speak with Congresswoman Hayes, who was voting early this morning. We caught her in Meriden. She said that she was feeling excited about today. Keep in mind, she is now seeking her 4th term, so she's used to this. She's been on the campaign trail. She doesn't want to take things for granted. She is a huge supporter of reproductive rights. She feels she's done a lot to this district to keep voters loyal to her. She's been very supportive of protecting small family farms, also children's nutrition programs and feeding children. But she does feel that she will be successful tonight, but obviously we will have to wait for all the results to come in tonight, and we will bring that to you as soon as we get it. For now, we are live in Waterbury. Susan Raff, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Susan, thank you very much. And we do want to let you know some quick breaking news in the race for the White House. Kamala Harris has won Connecticut. That will give her 7 electoral votes.
And stay with us. Our coverage continues later on tonight on Eyewitness News.
Live from Eyewitness News, this is extended coverage of Campaign 2024 Election Night.
Welcome back to our live local streaming coverage on the WAX, on WFSB Plus, and on the WFSB app. We have you covered from every angle, especially in-depth analysis on the local races. Right now, I want to go live to Channel 3's Dylan Fearon, who is out with the Chris Murphy campaign. And of course, Dylan, we know the Associated Press pretty quickly called this race and pronounced that Chris Murphy will keep his Senate seat for Connecticut. What's going on there? What's the mood like?
Hi, Kara. Good evening from the YG Club. We're directly behind and above home plate here at Duncan Park. We are waiting for Senator Chris Murphy to arrive to greet some of his supporters, to speak to the state. And Kara, as you mentioned, within minutes of the polls closing, CBS News, the Associated Press, and several others calling this race for Senator Murphy. We're still waiting for him to arrive here at the YG Club. We know that Senator Richard Blumenthal is here, supporting of Governor Lamont expected here, as well other Connecticut Democrats here. We have about 200 people expected here at the YG Club to celebrate with Senator Chris Murphy. And he told me a couple of hours ago, Kara, he was very confident that he would win this re-election campaign, that he would serve a 3rd term in the U.S. Senate representing everyone here in Connecticut, that he wasn't taking anything for granted. And Kara, it's very similar to what happened 2 years ago when Senator Blumenthal was running for re-election. Within 2 or 3 minutes, the race was called. Similar situation here. As soon as Senator Murphy arrives and this whole place gets crowded here and filled behind me, we'll bring you Senator Murphy's remarks here live on the WAX. Kara, we will send it back to you for now.
Dylan, thank you. And of course, we know that your race was projected quite early, Senator Chris Murphy, which may have not been a surprise. That was not a tight race. We know that the AP has also called it for Kamala Harris, and also not a surprise. But I want to bring in our panel because, of course, everyone has been talking about that today. Turnout, when are we going to know? And let's just start from the national perspective. We know that Pennsylvania is a slow vote counter. We don't expect to have anything from them for the balance of power or for the presidential race tonight. Is that right?
Right. I mean, every state has different laws. Every state takes a different amount of time. I think Nevada accepts mail-in ballots from the military until the end of the week. I mean, different states do it different ways. So it will take a while, just for the natural course of events. I know everybody's impatient. We all want the results right away, but it will take a while.
Apparently, we're going to have Florida tonight because of that new law.
Yeah, that's a new law. Yeah.
And, you know, we were talking about as we look at races like the 5th District, or to see how things are going and what you might be looking at for the trends tonight, both for Connecticut and for the nation. What are you looking for, Jimmy, to see some of the early returns when they do start to come in? What are you going to be trying to analyze?
Well, in seeing Kamala Harris on the ballot in Connecticut, it's interesting to see how well does she do in Connecticut. With President Biden, Biden won, for example, in the 5th Congressional District by 11 points. Hillary Clinton, when she ran for president, was less. I think it was about 6 points. So where are we in terms of the support that Kamala Harris is seeing across Connecticut? Because that will play a role with the different congressional districts, including in the 5th Congressional District. And we know that there are pockets of support for President Trump across Connecticut. And so how does then that play with some of those state Senate candidates and some of those state representative candidates that might be running in a place where the top of the ticket, President Trump, will do very well. And if they're a Democrat, can they outperform their own party and their own top of ticket in their own district? So there's some interesting races that I'm looking for.
You were out, I know, with campaign conversations.
Yeah. I don't know that we have coattails so much as we have issue tails, and it's immigration versus reproductive choice as the issues. The economy can go either way. Obviously, Trump polls better on the economy, and the Democrats have tried to fight that, saying we have a good economy. But let's, for the moment, set that aside. It's really, the Republicans have done a great job on immigration, and the Democrats have not done a great job particularly, but they have women's rights and reproductive choice, and I heard some voters talking about those issues. So I think it's less about the people than the issues for a change.
But also, when you look at pockets, right? I mean, it's interesting. Connecticut is the 3rd smallest state in the country, and there's so many different pockets. I mean, if you just take the town of Greenwich, for example, for 80 years, it was a strong Republican town, and then it started shifting. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won by, I think, 16 points, and then Joe Biden won by 25 points 4 years ago. And that trickles down. So it's not coattails per se, but when you are at the top of the ticket as a president or a governor or a U.S. Senate candidate, and then by the time you get down to the state Senate or the state House, it will affect a lot of times, unless that person you're really searching for on the ballot. I mean, right now we have a race in Greenwich, a state House race, and a state Senate race. They're two very contested races, and I think it will depend on how much Trump loses Greenwich will affect the state Senate and the state House race.
When we watch in Fairfield County. Hold those thoughts because I want to come back, but we do want to head out to the 1st Congressional District because that seat is also up for grabs between Democratic Representative John Larson, who has held that seat since 1998, and Republican Jim Griffin. Covers towns in the northern part of our state and, of course, the capital city as well. Channel 3's Aya Galal is keeping an eye on that race, and I saw you earlier at 4 o'clock. It was quite a busy place. How is it now that the polls have closed?
Good. Hi, Kara. Yes, we're at Goodwin University. This is where Representative Larson's team is watching the results come in. We're going to speak with the congressman joining us live right now. Representative Larson, we want to ask you, how are you feeling today?
Fantastic. I mean, this is, I think, a great day for Democrats. It's they've already called Connecticut for Harris and Murphy, and I don't think the congressional district will be far behind either, you know, and we're really so happy for Jahana Hayes, who had a real race, et cetera, and looks like she's going to win convincingly as well.
And you're feeling optimistic about your congressional race?
Yeah, I'm feeling very optimistic about our congressional race, and you know, I'm grateful for the people of the 1st Congressional District who have given me the honor to represent them in Washington, D.C., and it is truly an honor, and hopefully at the end of the night, we'll know what the situation is in the House and Senate and the presidency, and an opportunity to get a lot of things done, especially on Social Security. You know, we're looking out for you, actually. So.
Very good. And you're currently serving your 13th term, looking to continue staying in office.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a lot of work to do. And look, we've been working on Social Security for almost a decade. And imagine the last time Congress voted to enhance Social Security. It was 1971. That's over 53 years ago. And a lot has transpired since then, not the least of which is cost of living and what's happened. There's more than 70 million Social Security recipients. 5 million get below poverty level checks, most of them women, and most of them women of color. And then another 28 million that the only pension they have is Social Security. In the wealthiest nation in the world, very successful, we've got to make sure this happens. President Biden is right. What we need to do is lift the cap. Most people don't even know that there's a cap on Social Security. But for people making over $400,000, most of them pay nothing or haven't contributed at all. So we lift the cap on them, and that allows us to enhance benefits across the board and extend Social Security solvency into the future.
A big priority for you. Thank you, Representative Larson. That's our time. We're going to send it back to you guys. But for now, reporting live in East Hartford, Aya Gadad, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Aya, thank you. And Congressman Larson speaking there. We do want to check in now on the 2nd Congressional District race. That covers a large portion of the eastern part of our state. Democrat Representative Joe Courtney and Republican Mike France both want that seat. Channel 3's Luke Hydash is here with an update. And of course, Luke, the big story has also been the voting issues with those 1,000 ballots in North Stonington that people are still concerned about.
Right, Kara, that is, of course, part of this district. This specific race has not been called yet. We are in downtown Norwich at Joe Courtney's watch party. We are expecting to hear from him within the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. He is preparing his remarks here in the building now as supporters and people who worked on his campaign over the last couple of months are here getting ready to hear him speak. We did catch up with him earlier in the day when he was greeting voters at different polling centers across eastern Connecticut, and he said that he feels very confident in this race. He already beat Mike France once 2 years ago, back in 2022. He won that race by about 50,000 votes. When we asked Mike France about that, he said today, well, over the past couple of months, they took a step back. They saw where the holes were in the campaign, what needed to be fixed, what needed to be addressed, and they ran this campaign a little bit differently. Mike France is with his supporters tonight up 395 in Danielson. Again, Joe Courtney expected to be speaking here in Norwich in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. And of course, we will update you with what he says then. This race has not been called quite yet. We're live in Norwich. Luke Hydash, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Luke, thank you. And Themis, I want to start with you because you talked about how when you were in office, even how much went into allowing the early voting and thinking about how it was going to be done. And now we've got this issue with 1,000 ballots that weren't signed on the outside, and the Secretary of the State saying she would welcome a lawsuit. She understands that there may need to be one. What does that say? Because people are concerned about, is this all going to be fair? Is it going to work?
Right. I mean, and these things like this happening make people question the process. And to be honest with you, I don't understand how this happened. I mean, these registrars and everybody that work at elections and polls across the state in 169 cities and towns, they all get trained on how this works. And any of us that have voted early, which I have, you know, you fill out the ballot and you sign the envelope on the back. I don't know how somebody didn't believe that to be the case. And so the Secretary of the State mentioning that she welcomes it, I mean, I'm sure she doesn't welcome a lawsuit, but she understands it's legitimate. You know, so if things are, this is a perfect example of when things are actually wrong, legitimately wrong in an election process, we have to fix it and we have to remedy it. And this seems like something that actually went wrong and it needs to be remedied.
But I want to also, there's a lot of fear out there, and I want to bring up what you said earlier before we came on the air, which is that as long as we've been having elections, there's been a small percentage of things that go wrong, but maybe not anything that ever changes the outcome, that our elections are legitimate.
Right. I mean, that's the question, right? Is it going to change the outcome? I mean, is it a negligible thing that's wrong, or is it something that's substantive? You know, we We had an issue in Stratford.
Stratford had a glitch?
Dan just
Okay.
mentioned. I mean, people went to the polls to vote for state rep, and they got the wrong ballots.
Yeah.
Several years ago. I mean, they literally, if they went to vote for me, they got a ballot that didn't have my name on it. It had somebody else's name on it from the other side of Stratford, because there's a few state reps in each town sometimes. And so that was a legitimate thing, and we filed suit.
I had a mathematician at Fairfield University look at the numbers.
Yeah, right.
We knew how many people's ballots didn't go, and we knew the ratio, and it was a 13-vote difference in the race. And he concluded that there's absolutely no way of knowing who would have won that race if those ballots had been done correctly.
Wow.
So it does happen.
Jimmy, I know you probably have something to say, but I'm hearing that Senator Murphy's coming out with an acceptance speech. Let's listen in.
Applause for the best senior senator in the United States of America, Dick Blumenthal. He's here, he's going to speak in a moment, but there is no better governor in the United States of America. A big round of applause for Governor Ned Lamont, who's here. Let me just say this simply. Thank you to the people of Connecticut for giving me another chance to be Connecticut's United States Senator. I'm deeply grateful to this state for what they have done to put me in a position to work with Dick, to work with our great delegation. I'm just going to say a few words tonight because most of our attention is trained on these TV screens, watching very closely the national drama play out. But I only ran 2 pretty simple TV advertisements, digital advertisements this election. But I hope they encapsulate why I'm so excited to have the opportunity to serve another term representing Connecticut. The first commercial shows scenes from my annual walk across the state of Connecticut. It's something I love doing. It was something that was a lot easier 10 years ago when I wasn't 50 years old. But I do it because it's part of what helps me understand what I need to be fighting for on behalf of the people of Connecticut. But I also do it because I want to show people how much I love this job, right? How there's not a single day that I take it for granted, that I'm willing and ready to do exceptional things to make sure that I'm listening to everyone in this state. My mother grew up in public housing in New Britain, Connecticut, and she thinks it's such a miracle that her son, one generation removed from poverty, gets to be a United States Senator. And so I'm here to say thank you, and I'm here to pledge to the state of Connecticut that in my 3rd term, there will not be a single day that I won't look upon this opportunity as the greatest gift of my life. The second commercial of this campaign talks about my work with Senator Blumenthal 2 years ago to pass the first gun safety measure passed in the United States Congress in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I just think on a night like tonight, it's important to remember that we don't work as Democrats and as progressives to win elections. Elections are a means to an end. We work so hard on these elections because we want to change people's lives, right? We don't accept a world in which big corporations capture all of the power and resources, leaving peanuts for the rest of us, right? We don't accept a world in which our children fear for their lives when they walk to school and when they sit in school. We run these elections to win, but then to do something with the power that we are given by the voters. And I'm very proud of the accomplishment that we have been able to achieve together as a pair, as a partnership in the Senate. But I tell you, I'm prouder of nothing more than after 30 years of the gun lobby being in charge of Washington, D.C., watching Connecticut lead the growth of the modern anti-gun violence movement, and 2 years ago,
You've been listening to Senator Chris Murphy accept the AP call, saying that he will keep his U.S. Senate seat in a job that he loves. We want to go now to Channel 3's Stephanie Simone, and she is watching the presidential race. with our interactive board and technology. Stephanie, what can you show us now?
Kara, this is very interesting. Actually, the AP just called Illinois for Vice President Harris. So I want to take a look at these 19 votes, electoral college votes, and it looks like with just 11% reporting that Harris will take the state. I want to bring in presidential historian Tom Balcersky, and he's a professor with Eastern Connecticut State University. Something that you said was very interesting to watch. Also, we've been talking about this, the battleground state of North Carolina, and right now the numbers are starting to trickle in there. 23% of votes are in. What strikes you right now about this map?
Yeah, so when it comes to North Carolina, you're going to want to be focusing on the two major population centers in and around the Research Triangle of Raleigh-Durham. That's going to put you in here. We have Wake County, you have Chatham, you have Durham, and you have Johnston. This area is a growing part of the state. You also have the area in and around Charlotte, which again is going to put us in this direction. And these are going to be counties to watch as well.
And you can see the rural counties, of course, still going to Donald Trump, which is what we're expected to see. Another state worth watching is Michigan. This one was supposed to be called early. We were supposed to get these numbers quickly. So far, we are seeing some of them pour in, but just 7% right now. And it looks like Harris is up with about 60,000 more votes, just 7%. Anything striking you about this map?
Yeah, with Michigan, the classic bellwether county here is Macomb County. Now, in 2008, President Obama won this county, and ever since, political scientists, historians want to watch out for it. Only 0.1% in, so we don't know. But this is generally more of a working class, white, mostly voters, college degree or not, and it's really kind of a test of whether Michigan is going to stick with the Trump campaign as it did in 2016 or flip back as it did in 2020.
And something really important noting to the viewers at home, and I know you know this, so we have this 2020 button down here. This will tell us what it went to last time. So last time Joe Biden won Michigan. So when we hit that, that's what it says. So when you see that, it lets us know how it flipped. Another one that flipped in 2020 was Georgia. Right now, it's, still too close to call, obviously. 55% of the votes are in. Looks like Trump leading with about 300,000 more votes.
And same story here. Watch Atlanta, watch the Atlanta suburbs. It's just one city to be focused on, but this area right here is going to decide the election this time around.
All right. Thank you. Tom Balcersky, our presidential historian. Kara, back to you.
Steph, thanks. And while there's a lot of focus on the presidential race, understandably, the balance of power in Congress on this election day and at the state level, there are a lot of races that both parties in our state legislature are really keeping an eye on. We'll get to our analysis in a moment, but Chief Investigative Reporter Sam Smink is live in our studio with what you need to know about the influential races in Connecticut tonight. Sam.
Kara, in the state legislature, the Democrats have a majority in the House and Senate, while leaders in both parties agree that the majority is not likely to change. The majority in the Senate could become greater if Democrats win in 3 competitive races. One of those competitive races is taking place in the 8th state Senate district between incumbent Republican Lisa Seminara and Democratic Paul Honing. I just checked. 10% of precincts are reporting right now Seminara is ahead. This is a rematch from 2022. Last time, only 124 votes separated the two. Democrats are hoping to flip a key state Senate seat in Greenwich, Stamford, and New Canaan. Incumbent Republican Ryan Fazio is running against Democrat Nick Simmons. The seat went Democratic in 2018 after a century in Republican hands, but went back to Republican control in 2021 when Fazio was elected. Right now, with 9% of precincts reporting, Fazio is down. Incumbent Republican Tony Wong is facing challenger Rob Blanchard. Wong's last 3 races were very close. On the state house side, Democrats are hoping to keep their seat in the 81st district of Southington. Incumbent Democrat Chris Poulos is running against Republican Jim Morelli. Representative Poulos won his seat by 1 vote in 2022. A race that Republicans are hoping to overturn in the House is the race for representative in Torrington, where incumbent Deputy Speaker Michelle Cook faces a challenge from Republican Joe Canino. Now, we are watching these races closely, and we'll have more information as the night goes on. Sam Smink, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Sam, thank you. And let's start with that 81st district. We talked about that before the show about, wow, only 1 vote. If anyone thought, we've had voters say, I'm sitting this one out for a myriad of reasons, but one vote really can make a difference, especially in our local races. Jimmy, can we start with you?
Yes. Every vote really does count, right? When people say that, it's just not true. This state representative 2 years ago won by 1 vote. We had the district that Senator Fazio now represents won by about 60 votes last election. So every vote really does make a difference. And when you go and you take a look at the work that is done, it's about pulling out the vote in every single race. And I think what's also important to note is the early voting. We had 740,000 people participate in our early voting this year for the first time ever, and over 100,000 more participate in absentee ballots. So I think what's also interesting to note tonight is that we're seeing the results coming out of the polling places and the precincts right now, but also all of our registrars of voters, which are neighbors and people in every town working on their own local elections, taking a look at those early voting returns and the absentee ballot returns. So what you see coming out of the polling places might be different than what's going to be coming out of the early voting, because who participated in the early voting? 740,000 people. When we took a look at it, it skewed more Democratic, it skewed more women, and it skewed older. And I think that's important to take a look to see how were those voters voting, because all those votes are going to be coming in overnight and in the coming days. So it does test our patience that we have a new way of voting now through the early voting, and it's a lot of votes to sift through at the local level.
Thomas, I want to talk about the female vote, because we have talked about this. You are a staunch Republican, but you chose to do a write-in candidate because you couldn't bring yourself to really vote for President Trump. There may be other people like that. If we're seeing a lot, talk about the gender gap and the voting and what you expect on these local races and maybe nationally.
You know, I think we talked about it depends on, like in a state like Connecticut, it depends on how much Kamala, it's not that she won, we knew she would win, it's just how much she wins by. And that will affect the congressional seats, particularly the 5th, it will affect the state house and state senate seats. But it also matters who doesn't vote, right? It's just as much the groups that turned out. Like if women turn out in a large number, that will affect the vote. If some women don't turn out, that will affect the vote. You know, we talked about Michigan and the whole Israeli-Palestine conflict and what's going on there, you know, and who people trust with that and who people don't trust with that. So, you know, I think women are going to vote in large numbers this time. I believe 4 years ago it was 52-48 women to men voting, and that's going to be a big difference.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Eyewitness News. This is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
It is 8:56 right now on election night. Thank you for staying with us here on Channel 3. I'm Mark Zinni.
And I'm Erin Connolly. Some races in our state have already wrapped up. The Associated Press has declared Senator Chris Murphy the winner in his re-election bid.
Now, of course, right now we're still following several other big races, including the race for Connecticut's 5th District. That covers a significant portion of the state, including a big portion of Litchfield County, including Torrington and Goshen, along with New Britain, Avon, and Southbury.
Now, this race is a rematch between Representative Johanna Hayes and her Republican challenger, George Logan. Channel 3's Matt McFarland has been following Logan all day. He joins us now live there with the latest. Matt.
Hi there, Erin and Mark. Well, George Logan, his last stop visiting the polls was here in New Britain. Breaking tradition, he's not having an election night watch party with his supporters, but we're here at the Back Nine Tavern at the Stanley Golf Course here in New Britain, where the New Britain Republicans are doing their own watch party as the local results come in. And for Logan, though, he said a big thing for him was whether it's a more of the same or do you want change? That's what he was hoping for in this race, as it was very close just 2 years ago. So it'll be interesting to see what the turnout is. Will tickets be split? But again, we are waiting for the results tonight. As he said, he was feeling good, but now it's just waiting to see what those numbers are.
All right, Channel 3's Matt McFarland, thank you very much. Right now, let's take a closer look at the U.S. Senate race here in Connecticut. Minutes ago, the AP did project Chris Murphy as the winner of his Senate seat again. He faced a challenge again from Republican Matt Corey. We do have a crew at Dunkin' Donuts Park in Hartford. We're hearing Senator Murphy should be arriving there any moment now.
Now let's take a quick look at the other congressional races we're following as we wait for those results to come in the 1st District. Representative Joe Larson is being challenged by Republican Jim Griffin and Green Party candidate Mary Sanders. You can see right now he up 65% to 32%.
And heading over to the 2nd District, our state's largest congressional district, Congressman Joe Courtney facing a challenge this year from Republican Mike France. Joe Courtney with 48% of the vote right now, but about 4% in, so very early there.
And here's a look at the 3rd District. Democrat Rosa DeLauro facing off against Republican Michael Massey in the lead right now.
And finally, Fairfield County, Jim Himes, the incumbent, with 58% of the vote against his 2 challengers.
Channel 3 is your election authority. We'll have team coverage with reporters spread out all across the state, covering all of the key races.
Stay with us. The news continues right here on Channel 3 and, of course, later on the news at 11.
Live from Eyewitness News, this is extended coverage of Campaign 2024 Election Night.
Welcome back, everybody. We are live streaming a local analysis. If you're at an election party, this is the stream you want coming. I've got our great analysts here. We've got Jimmy Tickey for the Democrats, Themis Claridis for the Republicans, and Dan Haar with CT Insider to offer some perspective on these races. Let's start with you, Dan. I know last time we didn't get you. You had some points to make about what's going on in the state tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point about Stonington. You never want to see a glitch like that.
Yeah.
But if there has to be a glitch, for once, I'm glad it's not Bridgeport or Hartford, right, or Waterbury.
Right.
Because those are, those cities have had a lot of problems. You remember the ballots in 2010, and Bridgeport we know about from more recently, and they get beaten down. And it's not always the big cities that have the problems. And here's a problem. We talked about Stratford, and yes, this stuff matters, and I don't mean to, I'm not making light of it, but it is all over. And as the secretary said, it's a human.
It's a human error.
We're still human errors. The question it brings up is, the Republicans were against early voting at 14 days. Does this raise questions about early voting? And I'm turning to you.
I supported early voting.
I know you did. I'm turning to you because
and a bunch of our people did too.
It's not Jimmy, but
no. I mean, here's the thing. Anything new is always people are question, and I understand that. But we sat down. Like the Secretary of State at the time came to the legislature and said, I want to do early voting in this way. And we were like, okay, we had 2 choices. We either sit down and discuss a way that we think it can work, because you want people to understand and feel comfortable with having a fair process and that it's being done in a safe and secure way. So we came up with a plan to do it in a way that was the safest way possible, not in the way she originally wanted to do it, which I don't remember what, but it was, basically kind of Katie bar the door, do it as long as you want, whatever you want. And, we narrowed it down, and there are parameters, and it took several years before this went into play. That's why it's a little shocking to me that something like that could have gone wrong.
Because there were so many safeguards put in place.
But if something is going to go wrong, it should be a black and white thing like that, right?
Where you can then have a challenge and fix it.
You know it happened. There's no question that it happened. It's going to be remedied the way it's going to be remedied. It's not about you think it was wrong, you didn't think it was wrong, I wasn't sure, right? Because that's what gains trust when you know there's always going to be problems, but as long as we have the mechanisms to catch them and fix them.
Yes, transparency is huge, and we want to go out right now to Owen Kingsley, who has been covering the Secretary of the State tonight. And Owen, we were just talking about with our panelists about the issue of the 1,000 votes in North Stonington, where the envelopes weren't signed, and now there's an issue with those. But as you have been covering the Secretary of the State, what have been the big themes? I know early voting and a big turnout has been something we've been talking about.
No, that's absolutely true. And I'll touch on the North Stonington situation in just a moment, but quickly to get out of the way, the Secretary obviously touting a very smooth election day today as far as how things operated at Connecticut polls today. So what we know is we have been hearing throughout the day in several different areas of long lines for those looking to register to vote today. That's because at least 15,000 people participated in same-day registration. We understand that caused some lines in various areas throughout the state. As far as what we are knowing moving forward, so polls closed 8 o'clock tonight. Those votes through tabulators are going to be due tonight at 11:59, and by Friday at 9 a.m. local town clerks and city clerks, they're going to have to be able to certify their town and city municipal votes by 9 a.m. on Friday. Now, North Stonington was a big situation that the Secretary talked about. As we know, more than 1,100 of those votes were potentially, more than 1,100 votes were not signed. Now, as of 8 p.m., when those polls closed, when the Secretary talked to us at the Capitol building behind us, she told us that nearly 1,000 of those voters confirmed came back in, filled out a ballot, and signed it. So there's somewhere between the numbers that we've been given, between 100 and 200 ballots that could be affected. We don't know that exact number as of right now. And as we understand it, the Secretary was saying that she was sort of downplaying the potential problem at stake as of right now. She's not heard of any lawsuits that have been filed against the state over this situation, and we just simply tonight won't know exactly how many ballots. She said she believes that the number of people whose votes were not certified as of the end of the day today, she believes could have been voters who knew they had signed their ballots and knew that they were already valid. We'll continue gathering those updates. We'll have more of what the Secretary had to say coming up later tonight. For now, live in Hartford, I'm Owen Kingsley, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Owen, thank you. And now, for the first time, we're going to the 3rd Congressional District. Longtime Democratic Representative Rosa DeLauro is facing off against Republican Michael Massey. Channel 3's Hector Molina has been following this race all day and is joining us with more on that now. Hector.
Hi there, Carrie. Yeah, we're live here at the Schubert Theater in New Haven. Election nights are nothing new for Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. She's been in Congress since 1991. That's longer than how old some of the people here are, myself included. But let's see here. Hundreds of people here at the Schubert Theater having some drinks, food, and energy is very high, very confident in tonight's election. Let's go in here to some more of the support crowd. A lot of people here supporting Rosa DeLauro, including this man right here to my right, Mike Song, the father of Ethan Song and a key advocate for Ethan's Law, one of the strict gun control laws here in Connecticut. Mike, you're obviously a key supporter of Rosa DeLauro. Speaking with her team, how's she feeling tonight?
Well, I think people are pumped up. Are we ready to win? Are we ready to win? Pumped up. People love Rosa. I mean, people love Rosa. She's everywhere, and she's helped us so much with Ethan's Law down in D.C. She's relentless and always advocating for Connecticut, Connecticut businesses, Connecticut citizens, Connecticut people, Connecticut women, and I'm 1,000% behind her. She's helped our family get through a crisis by affecting real change. And of course, the state of Connecticut has been amazing as well in whole. All of our representatives have supported Ethan's law, which passed here with strong bipartisan support. And what does that show you? It shows you that we can come together, even as divided as we are. And Rosa's always looking to reach across the aisle.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. It was great talking to you.
It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, her opponent, Michael Massey, his focus, a lot of energy here. This is quite the party to be. Now, we spoke with Michael Massey earlier tonight. His focus is on supporting struggling families in urban communities. We tried to get him on camera, but he denied to speak with us. That's the latest here in New Haven tonight. Hector Molina, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Hector, thank you so much. A lot of energy there. Well, let's move on to the 4th Congressional District. Representative Jim Himes is being opposed by Republican Michael Goldstein. That district covers the southwestern portion of our state. I want to show you a look at any results that we might have there right now coming in. Doesn't look like we have too much, but we've got 58% right now for Jim Himes, 40% for Michael Goldstein, and 2% for the independent candidate, Benjamin Wesley. As a reminder, you can find election results as they come in right on the WFSB app, and that is the QR code to download it. And of course, if you're watching us, you know you can watch right here on WFSB Plus, the app, or just the Wax. If you have one of those nifty voice remotes, just say the Wax. You can watch us on your election party. All eyes are on Pennsylvania tonight. That is shaping up to be one of the most contentious battlegrounds in the country. They call it the path to the White House. Joining us now from Philadelphia is Molly Martinez. Molly, we have seen both of the candidates spend tremendous amounts of time in the Keystone State. Why is it so important, and what are you seeing there now?
Kara, this is really the big fish of the swing states. There are 19 electoral votes up for grabs. Pennsylvania went to Donald Trump in 2016. It went to Joe Biden in 2020. And right now it is a virtual toss-up. So the ball is loose and both sides need it. You just said something very key here. The keys to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue go through Pennsylvania Commonwealth. And the candidates know that. As you mentioned, they have spent tremendous time and resource here in the Keystone State. Kamala Harris had 4 separate events yesterday as her last day on the campaign trail. Donald Trump had 2. So they know the value of the Keystone State. They know how important it is in securing the White House.
Yeah, and you know, we've got slow states and we've got fast states. I know we all want to know about Pennsylvania, but you are in a slow state with some unique rules around counting the ballots. Can you explain that for us and what it's going to mean as we await results?
Yes. So before we get to that, I just want to say there have been a couple glitches today. One was in Cambria County. They were having some issues with the scanning of their ballots, and so they extended voting hours by 2 hours. So polls will close in Cambria County at 10 p.m. tonight. But Pennsylvania has this law in which they cannot begin counting mail-in ballots until polls close. So according to the University of Florida Election Lab, about 1.8 million Pennsylvanians cast ballots as of Sunday. But those can be ready to go, but they cannot be counted until polls close. So already there's a huge backlog even before polls close. Once polls close, poll workers are inundated with that counting process. So it is unlikely, like you said, a slow state, that we're going to get any definitive answers tonight unless it is a blowout. But this is looking like it's going to be much more of a photo finish.
Okay. Molly Martinez, you are in the eye of the storm, so to speak. Thank you for joining us from Philadelphia. I know we'll be checking back in with you throughout the evening. In the meantime, our team coverage continues back here in our state. Voters did have the chance to vote on, with no excuse, absentee voting. Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Leah Red is joining us live now to break down the latest on the only statewide ballot question. Aaliyah.
Well, Kara, the polls closed about an hour ago, and I've been tracking the results, and here are the live results that we are seeing right now as they come in. And last checked, over 20,000 people voted yes, and about 15,000 have voted against the amendment. Now, if this does pass, it would allow for the state legislature to pass a law allowing for all residents to vote through mail-in ballots. And right now, you can only vote through mail-in ballots if you're on active duty, you're sick, disabled, or for a religious reason that prevents a person from getting to the polls. Now, Now, again, right now, about 20,000 have voted yes and over 15,000 have said no. Now, statewide absentee ballots, it's something that honestly a lot of people are looking to have approved. I was speaking to people out today in Deep River and Portland, and they were saying, you know what, it would be so helpful if they were able to just mail in ballots. And coming up a little bit later on the Wax, I'm going to speak a little bit about other issues that people in Deep River and Portland were able to vote on. For now, Kara, back to you.
Aaliyah, thank you. And we'll watch those numbers as they come in. And coming up a little bit later on the Wax and WFSB Plus, more specific towns, like Aaliyah said, about Portland, Deep River, the ballot questions, and we'll talk about that as we continue the evening. Right now, I want to go out to Brian Shackman, who is watching a multitude of races from WTIC radio as he does election night coverage. Brian, what are you seeing and hearing that you think is making a difference right now?
Well, I mean, obviously in Connecticut, the races, called for the White House. Senator Murphy was already called. I mean, it's just not a lot of drama outside of the 5th. And the real question with the people we're talking to across the country is that will we know tonight? I mean, that's the big debate. And I know you just talked to Pennsylvania recently, but we've talked to people in both Pennsylvania and we've gone to other states. And basically the thought is Pennsylvania, they can count votes faster than they did in the last election. And there's a chance we might know sooner. The feeling is if Pennsylvania breaks for Trump, it could be game over for Harris, whereas like in Georgia or North Carolina, if one of those two states breaks for Harris, that could be a huge, huge thing for her campaign. And locally, we talked a little bit about the Murphy, Matthew Corey. It's just to have $10 million more dollars. He's such a professional politician. The debate really showed that. And, Matthew Corey has some good policies to run on, but he didn't have the money and he didn't have the exposure, or even after running for office several times, just didn't have the name recognition. So they called it with like 0% reporting. But right now, the real debate we're having is, are we going to be working overnight or are we going to know before we go to bed? And right now, some people think there's a better chance than maybe they thought maybe 6 or 8 hours ago that they might know something decisive in the presidential race tonight. I mean, I don't know if I feel that way. I think it's going to take longer, but that's what some of the people we're talking to.
Interesting. Well, our analysts here all said, no, they're up all night. Nobody's sleeping. So
nobody.
Brian, thank you. And after months of campaigning by Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, it does all come down to tonight, even if we don't know tonight. Joining us, though, to talk about the view from the vice president's election headquarters in Washington is Channel 3's White House correspondent, John Decker. John, we know she's at her alma mater right now. What is the mood with the Harris campaign? Are you seeing confidence?
I would describe it as cautious optimism. They believe they have a path to get to 270, the easiest path, winning those blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. We know that Pennsylvania, Michigan polls have already closed. They like the way the turnout has gone in both of those states, so they believe they're on their way, but they're also cautious, knowing full well that all the polls before tonight's election indicated it was essentially a toss-up in each and every one of the swing states.
I know you've been covering elections since Bill Clinton was president. I was an intern in that White House. What are you going to be watching for as the results come in the next couple of hours?
Yeah, I'm watching North Carolina really closely. North Carolina is a state that Donald Trump won in both 2016 and 2020. It was the state that he won by the narrowest of margins in 2020. It's a state he should have in his column, but he visited the state 3 times in 3 days, on Saturday, on Sunday, and yesterday, which indicates he hasn't locked that state up just yet. So I'm watching that state in particular to see if Donald Trump can lock that down. That's important for him in terms of getting to 270 electoral college votes.
John, thank you so much. We can hear a lot of music, a lot of people, I think, having fun until the results come in.
That's right.
We'll be checking back in with you as we can throughout the night. John Decker, our White House correspondent. Want to bring back to this studio with our team coverage, and Channel 3 is your campaign 2024 election authority. They definitely have some music out there. Let's check in with Channel 3's Stephanie Simoni. She's at the campaign 2024 desk. It's a little quieter where you are, Stephanie, but you have the technology.
Yeah, we got all the tech, no music. music. We're not bouncing here hard, but we do have some really cool numbers. All right, so this is New Mexico. The only reason why I pulled this up is because numbers are just coming in from New Mexico. Very small numbers, just 1.6%. But let's get out of this and let's take a look at the whole map. Some of the numbers are starting to fill in. Still very early, though. But you can see they need 270 to win, the presidential candidates. Right now, Donald Trump has 177, Vice President Kamala Harris, 99. Still a lot of time. I want to bring in our presidential historian, Tom Belsurski. He's a professor at Eastern Connecticut State University. Thanks for being here. Let's take a look at this map together. So last time we were on, Illinois just got called. All the dark blue you see, that is what has been called for Vice President Kamala Harris. When you look at all the dark red, that's everything that has been called for Donald Trump. And then when you take those away, you kind of see how the map is leaning. What does white mean? What are we?
Toss-up, I think.
Okay, yes, it means toss-up. It means it's kind of a stalemate. We don't know. And Virginia is very interesting. We were narrowing in on those D.C. suburbs, seeing what the turnout looked like. Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax. These are the numbers that are very interesting for, that's what Vice President Kamala Harris, her campaign, will be looking at very closely.
Yes,
Why
you're right.
is that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the population center of Virginia. Virginia's population has changed in the last several presidential cycles. It's become a more reliable Democratic state, and it's because of the growth in these D.C. suburbs. You were clicking on some of them. Again, Alexandria and Arlington are the two large ones, but so is Fairfax. Loudoun County is another one to watch. The breakdown here is about what we expected as well. But if this trend continues in this area, it will bode well for Vice President Harris.
All right, let's take a look at Georgia right now, because that is leaning right now for Donald Trump. And you can see that 69% of the votes are in. So, and when you see this 2020 button down here, it just tells us, if we press it, that it went Democratic in the last. So President Joe Biden took this in 2020. We don't know how it'll go this time, but right now, former President Donald Trump is up by 200,000 votes. So we will closely watch Georgia. I want to bring in, we were supposed to talk about the balance of power, because this is very interesting. It is neck and neck in the Senate right now. Jim Justice took West Virginia. What does that mean? Let's talk about the balance of power in the Senate right now.
Well, I'll say this. I know this is the presidential map, but in many ways, it actually reflects some of the same trends. Jim Justice win in a place where we had previously an independent, although he caucused more with, now we see the map here, with the Democrats. That was Joe Manchin. It really is just now a much narrower path for Democrats to keep that balance of power. It's very unlikely, in fact, at this point. This is the one they had to win to be sure they'd have a chance at the balance of power. But for Republicans, they're very happy, I'm sure, right now with Justice's victory. It looks like a much easier path toward the Senate majority.
All right. It looks like Republicans are happy, obviously, with that Jim Justice win. Still too early to tell with the presidential race. Thank you so much. We will be with Tom Belsurski, our presidential historian, all night as we watch this map fill in and those votes come in. Kara.
Stephanie, thanks. I want to move it to Fairfield, to our Senate race, with the race with Wong right now. You've said he's really been polling in an impressive way that might indicate some things. Can we talk about that? Let's start with, you want to start with you, Dan, and then we'll move on to what it means?
The numbers in Republican headquarters down there from our guy, Jared Wardwell, for CT Insider, is reporting, and that Tony Wong is actually outpolling by 2,500 votes with 7,600 votes. But more importantly, he's got more votes than any of the top of the ticket candidates, Himes, Harris, or Hayes. So that's in that district, he's got more votes.
What does that mean when you're looking at that, Themis?
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, all our numbers are consistent with what's going on there. I mean, Tony Wong is a hard campaigner. Tony Wong spends all his time committed to his district, and there are some people that like him and some people that don't, but he's everywhere all the time. And so, I mean, I think that we talk about pockets in Connecticut, and that was one of the targets for the Republicans and the Democrats. It was looked at as a risky seat that we had. And the Democrats were certainly targeting, and Rob Blanchard was a person that worked for Governor Lamont. Yeah. But he's doing well, and so that's, I think, that will affect Johanna Hayes and George Logan too, because that's part of their district.
Right, it's an interesting district because it's partly in the 4th Congressional District, partly in the 5th Congressional District. And 2 years ago, Tony Wong won by about 600 votes. So a lot thought going into this, if Rob Blanchard could tighten it up, he really might be well on his way to having an upset. But based on the information we're getting, it's...
However, it is just the machine count. This is just the machine count.
Right, we still have the early vote still coming in, which was sizable in this community.
Right.
But very interesting. I do, time-wise, need to get to Cassidy, who has been covering the complaints at the polls. Cassidy, tell us what you know so far.
Yeah, we've been monitoring the emails that have been coming into the newsroom all day, and we've seen kind of two main issues that we've been following. But overall, the Secretary of State says it's been a smooth election day. The first issue we're taking note of is issues with voting machines. We've confirmed reports of this in Torrington, Meriden, Ansonia, South Windsor, and Colchester. In each case, we're told the machine was fixed and all ballots were counted. When a machine goes down, the ballots go in an auxiliary box. In the meantime, the second main issue we've been hearing about is delays with same-day voter registration. We've heard reports of people having to wait several hours to register. The Secretary of State says she's been monitoring this as well. Anyone who got in line before 8 p.m. will have the opportunity to vote tonight. It is possible people are still in line voting as long as they got in line before 8 p.m. We have crews out monitoring both of these issues as polls lines start to wind down. Kara.
Cassidy, thanks. We just, as we're talking about some of the problems, I wanted to, before we have to take a quick break, Dan, you've got some projections coming in from CT Insider in the 5th right now.
I wouldn't. Oh no, this isn't the 5th. This is in the Blanchard long race, and this isn't a projection. But what we're seeing is as the numbers come in, Senator Wong's lead is holding up right now, 85-55 to 59-55.
Okay.
So, and that again is without absentee ballots or early voting, which is a big deal because Democrats overvoted in those. So we're not, nobody's anywhere yet, but those are, his lead is holding up as the night progresses.
Okay. We will continue to watch that. We do have to take a quick break right now, but we'll be checking back in with Mark and Arian in the studio and with more projections and calls just ahead. Stay with us on WFSB Plus and the Wax.
Eyewitness News. This is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
It's 9:26 right now on election night. Thank you for joining us for our continuing coverage here on Channel 3. I'm Mark Zinni.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Connolly. The Associated Press has declared Senator Chris Murphy victorious in his re-election bid. Let's get right out to Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Dylan Fearon. He is live at Duncan Park in Hartford, where Senator Murphy just stepped off the stage. I imagine a lot of people happy there, Dylan.
Mark, Aaron, absolutely. Look, an hour ago, this entire area behind me was full of Senator Murphy supporters. But now this race has been called, they've all moved in front of me. There's a bar here. Everyone's grabbing a drink, celebrating this victory for Senator Murphy and taking in the presidential results. And he had told me a couple of hours ago, he said he was confident, but he thought it would take until about 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight for the race to be called. And what do you know, at 8:05, CBS News, the Associated Press, and several other outlets calling this race within minutes of the polls closing in Connecticut. This is a rematch from 2018 between Senator Murphy and Matthew Corey. Back then, 6 years ago, Senator Murphy won the race with about 60% of the votes. And that's pretty much what we're seeing tonight, Mark and Aaron. 7% of the vote in so far, and Senator Murphy hovering around that 60% range. Here he was just moments ago.
I love this job. I hope people can tell that. Obviously, I'm thrilled to have the chance to do it for another 6 years, and the country has a big decision to make tonight. So my hope is that Kamala Harris is elected and we can keep trying to bring Republicans and Democrats together. Obviously, if the country decides differently, it's going to be a very tough next 4 years. So I'm going to be like everybody else tonight, waiting patiently to see what the decision of the country is. But I'm mostly just filled with excitement and thankfulness to the state of Connecticut for giving me the chance to do this job for another 6 years.
So not only has the race been called here tonight, but Senator Murphy has declared victory. He says he hasn't talked to Matthew Corey just yet, hopes to get on the phone with him later tonight and speak about this campaign and what a long campaign this has been over the last year or so. We're live in Hartford tonight. I'm Dylan Fearon, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Dylan, thank you. Another race we're watching is in Connecticut's 5th Congressional District, the race here between Jahana Hayes and Republican George Logan. Right now, just 7% of the vote in. It's pretty much cut in half right there. Jahana Hayes just leading by about 100 votes right now. But again, a lot more to come in.
And here's a look at the race to watch in the Connecticut General Assembly. The State Senate District 8 race with 15% reporting there. Republican Lisa Seminara is leading over Democrat challenger Paul Honig. In about 30 minutes, we will check in on the race for Connecticut's 1st district.
All right, we'll see you then. Take care.
Live from Eyewitness News.
Welcome back, everyone. We have our extended streaming coverage. We'll be with you from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock as the results are coming in, bringing you live breaking coverage on all the local and national races. And I'm joined, of course, by my panelists here. We've got Dan Haar with CT Insider, Themis Claridis for the Republicans, and Jimmy Tickey for the Democrats. Let's talk about the upset that you just got word of, Themis.
Well, we're hearing that an Republican incumbent state representative in Stratford, Laura Dancho, has been beaten by Caitlin Shake. And I know that Jimmy has a very long story that he will shorten as to the background of it, but it's a little bit of an interesting story. So.
Okay, yeah. So you're smiling, Jimmy. You like this upset?
Well, I'm happy.
Of course he's smiling because his guy won.
Red to blue, we like that. But Caitlin Shake is a tenacious campaigner. She's a friend. She's from Stratford, and she's a councilwoman. Then when they went through the redistricting process in Stratford, really was counted out and redistricted into a much tougher district. She ran there, and she won there. So she's proven she can win not only in Democratic districts and Republican districts, but fight for the people of Stratford. She ran for state representative. The deck was stacked against her, and she had an upset tonight, and she won the seat in Stratford, and she's the newest state representative from Stratford, and +1 for the Democrats so far tonight.
It's not official.
But yes, long way to go, and a lot of early votes to still be counted throughout the night. So we have a long way to go.
I'm also hearing that many towns are closing up for the night and finishing tomorrow.
They're just, they're packing it in.
What kind of amateurs they are. It's 9:30. We have a whole night to go.
Keep going.
I know, right?
Last thing with early voting, it's going to take a long time to count the early votes throughout the night and to tomorrow. This is the first time we've ever had early voting in the state of Connecticut, so it's something new for all of us, and we really will be counting these votes for hours and potentially a day or two to make sure that all those 740,000 people who voted early, that their votes are counted, and that can make all the difference in these tight races that we're hearing about. 740,000 people is a lot of people that voted for the first time through the early voting.
Early and absentee is a little under 50%, which is
a lot.
880,000, I think, right?
Well, that's right.
Give or take.
50% of those who voted
Yeah.
last time. Now, we may exceed last time, and we may fall to 42% or something like that. But the point is that it's not a, it's not just, oh, you know, we usually every year say, oh, well, the absentee ballots. It's sort of like, you know,
these are real numbers.
Yeah, these are real numbers. But I also want to make the point that this Democratic win raises the question: do we have too many Democrats? Even if you're a Democrat, do we have too many Democrats in the State House?
Yes, hold it there. Hold it there.
Even if you're a Democrat.
Themis agrees with you. Let's go out to Matt McFarland, though, and he is with Republican George Logan's camp. What say you, Matt? What's the feeling there?
Hi there, Kara. Well, George Logan's last stop on Election Day was at a polling place here in New Britain. You might recall he's breaking tradition, not doing that traditional election night watch party with his supporters. We're here at the Back Nine Tavern at Stanley Golf Course, where New Britain Republicans, they're watching their local races, the state races as well. So as for the Logan camp, though, he said he was feeling pretty good as we were getting last talked with him as the polls were starting to close just before 8 o'clock. Said he felt pretty good. He said basically this is a race. It comes down to if you want more of the same or change. You might remember 2 years ago he went off faced Jahana Hayes. Very close race, roughly about 2,000 votes separating the two. So he said he felt pretty good. He said he raised more money this time than he had in the past. He thought his message was resonating with folks. Key issues for him, inflation, jobs, the southern border. But he said now it's just going to come down to counting those votes to seeing if they can get over that hurdle, that close number that they had the last time. So now that's just something that we'll have to see as the numbers start to come in. For now, though, we are going to send it to Susan Raff, who's in Waterbury, where she's been following Jahana Hayes all day. Susan.
Matt, good evening from Waterbury. We are still waiting for results to come in. We do know that about maybe a handful of precincts are now reporting. This is a fairly large district, not the largest in the state, obviously, but there are 41 different towns in the 5th district, and that could be one of the reasons why it is going to take a while for those results to come in. In the meantime, we've had a chance to speak to people here, and certainly about Jahana Hayes, who's been cautiously optimistic about winning tonight, but she did feel very confident as we spoke with her earlier tonight. This is a very important race. She's now seeking her 4th term. She believes that people in this district will want her to go back to Washington. Reproductive rights have been a very big issue, not just in this race, but races all over the country, and especially in the presidential race. We spoke to voters today. They agree with that, and they feel that Connecticut needs to support someone who supports those rights. And as you heard from Matt McFarland, was it a telling sign that George Logan is not having a campaign event? Also, we do know that the RNC pulled some money from Logan's campaign for TV ads, so that might be telling, but we really don't know right now. We're just going to have to wait and see. Obviously, we saw Senator Chris Murphy announcing here tonight. That happened probably less than an hour after the polls closed, or roughly around that time. I think a lot of people were hoping that would be the case here tonight, but it is not. This is a hotly contested race. It was very close 2 years ago. And another thing is that the national Democrats would really like to win this seat, because Democrats need 4 Democrats to win tonight in order to take back the House of Representatives. We want to throw it back to you, and we will bring you an update as soon as we get more information.
Susan, thank you so much. And we are going to come out here now to talk to our analysts, because what we've been talking about as we look at the 5th district race, and one of the big problems Amanda Callahan has been on, is the biggest polling place in Torrington, the tabulators went down, and that caused some problems with people not being able to vote. Also, how long it's going to take to count these votes, right?
Right, so they're hand counting all the votes now in Torrington, and that's very significant, because the state rep race, Michelle Cook's state rep seat is a big challenge this year for her, and so that will affect that race. It will affect the Senate District 8, which is Lisa Seminara's race, and then it will certainly affect the 5th Congressional District with Jahana Hayes and George Logan.
Yeah. So, I mean, when people are going to say, what does that mean? They're broken? Does that mean votes aren't going to be? That's not the case. You think this is a voting issue that can be solved, just
Right,
for
they
the
just
viewers
have
at
to
home?
hand count. It won't go. It didn't work through the machines mechanically, so they have to take one at a time and hand count them.
And there's a fail-safe procedure for that. That's where they put them in the other box,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to hand count. Okay, okay.
By their local officials, by their local Democratic and Republican officials and registrars of voters. So the local poll workers who have been there all day, they would be the one to remedy this.
And let's show some of the results, because we have from the 5th District what we have so far. Although you just mentioned Torrington is a big part of the 5th District, we're going to have to hand count those votes. But at last check, we've got Hayes now 56% of the vote, George Logan with 44%, and they're separated, I mean, just a little over 2,000 votes. It strikes me as we look at this, we've talked about how some of the races have come down to even one vote, but on these local races, this turning out the vote is so important, because these aren't huge margins.
The Torrington race is a really important race, and it's indicative. It's important because Michelle Cook there is a veteran state rep who, I was there walking with her doing doors. She knows everybody's dog, let alone everybody. And she has brought millions of dollars, disproportionately millions of dollars, to that district, and she's running up against a new, fresh-faced, very intelligent, popular, young 27-year-old Republican. So it's a very interesting race.
But let's add to that historically, in her last several races, she has had closer and closer races. Okay, so even though, I mean, I served with her, you know, I like her very much, but she has had very close races and closer each time, which means she's vulnerable. And Torrington is a very blue-collar community, so it has been shifting more in that direction, and that's why it's so significant.
Jimmy?
Yes, no, I agree. It has been a tougher community, and increasingly so throughout Torrington and really throughout that Route 8 corridor down through the Naugatuck Valley. It's been tougher terrain for Democrats, and though Michelle has been a real leader in the State House and has done so much for the Torrington community, it's going to be a tough race. And so now with this polling issue, we may just have to wait a little bit longer through the night into tomorrow as the local election officials are hand counting those results.
We've been talking about national issues, but electric rates are really hurting Democrats in conservative districts like that one. And
everywhere
and also Poulos and Southington. Electric rates are a big deal.
Economy, a big issue, of course, across America, but right here in Connecticut, when they're trying to decide.
We win that issue here.
Yes, I door knocked with Michelle this summer, and it's true. She knew every single person behind every single door, and so that can make a difference in knowing your community and knowing the constituents across the community, so that if they've got issues, she's helping to help solve them, and is really a person-to-person, block by block, built her campaign. But still, it's a tough district, and increasingly so, and so I'm interested to see what happens tonight with that result.
All right, thanks, guys. I want to go out now to Aya Galal, our Capitol reporter for our Hartford bureau chief. Aya, you've been covering the race of John Larson for us. I know we got to speak to Congressman Larson earlier, who's been in office since 1998. He seems pretty confident, but the polls are closed now. What are you seeing?
Hi, Kara. Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of optimism and positivity here. We're at Goodwin University. This is where Congressman John Larson's team is watching the results coming in. We're still waiting on those official results to come in. But after speaking with the congressman just about an hour ago, he's feeling optimistic about both the presidential race and his congressional race. He has been in office, like you mentioned, Kara, since 1998. He's currently serving his 13th term. When asked today about his priorities if reelected, he says he wants to get Social Security enhanced and reformed. Republican Jim Griffin is running against Larson. He used to be a Democrat but is now a Republican, hoping to defeat Larson, which will not be easy. Griffin says he wants to take down the Federal Reserve. And so back here at Goodwin University, we are seeing a lot of optimism amongst Larson's team. We're still waiting on those official results to come in. Of course, we're going to be monitoring things very closely. For now, reporting live in East Hartford, Aya Galal, Channel 3 Eyewitness News. We'll send it back to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Aya. And we want to head out now to the 2nd congressional district race. It's a district that covers a huge portion of the eastern part of our state. And Democrat Representative Joe Courtney and Republican Mike France both are after that seat. Channel 3's Luke Hydash is there with an update. I know you've been covering some voting irregularities in North Stonington. Of course, this is also submarine territory. So what are you hearing tonight, Luke?
Kara, good evening. There's, of course, a lot to talk about in the 2nd District, and a second ago you were just talking about how big this area is. This is the largest district in Connecticut. It stretches from Enfield south to Madison and everywhere east over to the Rhode Island border. So this is a big chunk of the state that we're talking about, and with that comes a lot of time to get in all of the results tonight because you have so many different towns and cities that are reporting. Right now, less than 10% of the vote is in, which is why we have not heard from Joe Courtney yet. His team says usually in the past at this point of the night, he'll have come out and perhaps had said something or spoken with supporters. He did come out here and shake a few hands and say hello to a few of his supporters about 20-30 minutes ago or so, but we have not had a speech from him yet. And although his campaign is very optimistic, he is not declaring victory quite yet. Mike France, his Republican challenger, we caught up with him earlier in the day. He said that he attacked this campaign a little bit differently than the last time he ran against Joe Courtney back in 2022. His campaign is hosting an event tonight up 395 in Danielson. But again, here in Norwich, we are waiting for more results to come in, as is the campaign for Joe Courtney before he comes out and says anything and before they make any type of victory call. But a lot of optimism for the Courtney campaign tonight. We are live in Norwich. Luke Hydash, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Luke, thank you. I want to come back out to our analysts here as we're watching everything that's happening. Of course, Luke is in that 2nd District where we've been talking about some of those voting issues. There was 1,000 envelopes that needed to be signed that weren't, so we're watching that. But, you know, Connecticut, when we talk about the national race, it's already been called for Kamala Harris, and it's easy to dismiss us as just a blue state. But you were saying from managing as you were managing the Republican Party and going throughout the whole state, and all of you, that it's really it's more complex than sometimes people think of it.
There are so many different pockets in Connecticut that are Republican, Democrat. You know, I know Jimmy mentioned, you know, the Route 8 corridor, the Naugatuck Valley is very Republican. It's turned that way. We've talked about Torrington, you know, how that's gone. You know, we've seen how Greenwich has shifted the other direction. You know, when I was leader, managing 72 members, and you'd have some that, you know, were completely to the right, some that were more moderate, and came from different parts of the state. And Eastern Connecticut is much different than Western Connecticut. That's different from Central Connecticut. And it's a very different state. It's much more diverse than people think. You know, you have the Western and Southern part that are very New York centric. I always tell the story when I went to college at Trinity College. My parents moved me in and got everything set up. My parents went home and I go, Dad, something's wrong with the TV. Because I got Channel 3 and I got Channel 8 and I got all these channels that I'd never really heard of before because we always had New York stations, right? Because we were in New York market. And it's just interesting that it's such a diverse state in that way, and it matters politically.
Yeah. And Jimmy, I'm even thinking the west end of Hartford, which some people would certainly call a more liberal area. But even as I drive through the west end of Hartford, you will see Trump signs, and you certainly see more Harris signs. But it's not like people aren't putting up the other side.
Right. No, absolutely. Hey, we're Connecticut, and we're in New England. We have that Yankee independence about us. People do ticket split, and so they might vote for one party on one piece of the ballot, but maybe move to the other party for another part of the ballot. I always say 169 towns, we have no county government. It wasn't that long ago across our 5 congressional districts that we only had 2 Democratic members in John Larson and Rosa DeLauro, and the other members of Congress were Republicans. So it's changed over time, but still, if you look at the state in all 169 towns, it's purple, it's red, it's not all blue. Statewide, yes, Kamala Harris won Connecticut, but when you really drill down and you look at the legislative races and the mayor's races, we really are have lots of red communities represented by Republicans in a lot of these small and medium-sized towns, as well as some Democrats as well. But it's not true just to say, you know, it's a blue state.
Real quick before we go to Stephanie, what about, I want you to chime in on this, but also how much of it's going to be a gender gap and that as far as turnout?
I don't know if there's a gender gap at the House and Senate level, certainly at the national level. Do you think there's a gender gap between the parties at the...
No, but I think it trickles down. I think it trickles down, as we talked about regarding how Harris, how much she wins the state of Connecticut by. It will trickle down to the rest, but I don't think per se on the House and Senate level. I
think the bigger issue is whether we go to veto-proof majorities. Right now, let's do a little modeling here. You had 72, which was the recent high. Mm-hmm. The low was 37 House members.
We were the thundering 37.
The thundering 37. You were the assistant majority leader, deputy majority leader.
I was.
Right. And so if you go from 54 now, to 49, which could happen tonight, that's a veto-proof majority. And that means that Governor Ned Lamont cannot stop that majority from breaking the cap on spending.
But I think I mean, listen, anything can happen. I think that's not likely. I think the Senate has a more of a risk of doing that.
The Senate does, definitely.
More of a risk. I don't think it is a risk. I don't think it's a realistic risk in the House. I think, we saw losing one member, and you're going to see somebody else beating somebody on the other side. So
okay.
I think it'll probably even itself out.
Okay.
Pretty strong numbers as it is, with Democrats in the Senate 24 and Democrats in the House 98, not including what happens tonight. So we might be up by 1 or 2. I'm not sure if we'll get to that kind of majority levels, but I think the Democrats might see an addition of maybe 1 or 2 on the whole.
We'll see what happens. But right now we're going to switch gears and head out to Stephanie Simoni, who is watching our national board and see what's coming in. Of course, everyone wants to know. We've already talked to the folks out in Pennsylvania, where they're unfortunately a slow state. We're watching things come in. But what can you show us, as everyone wants every nugget of information right now?
Yes, Pennsylvania is a slow state. Of course, we're watching all of the states right now, and more of those results keep rolling in. Now, something that is worth noting is that the governor's race in North Carolina just got called. And it is with the Democrats. So anyways, right now, if you're looking at North Carolina, 62%. Trump won this in 2020. When we hit that 2020, it tells us that. That's what that button is there for. And it tells us exactly kind of how things are looking now. Right now, Trump is leading in North Carolina by 100,000 votes about, and 62% of the votes are in. So that is interesting and worth noting. I want to bring in our presidential historian, Professor Tom Balcersky. Thank you so much for being here once again. So let's talk about North Carolina. This is one to watch. This is something that Trump held on to in 2020. So where are we? What is of note to you here?
Yeah, so the places to watch are going to be, we'll start here in Mecklenburg County. Only 15% of the vote in. This is one of the largest population centers in the state. This is the city of Charlotte, and a growing part of the state of North Carolina. Zooming back out, we want to look at our research triangle, Wake, Durham, and Chatham counties. We want to sort of see how these 3 counties are going as well. Another big population center. The demographics of North Carolina are changing in the same way they're changing in Virginia. It's been slower to kind of decide which way it's going. So this one looks like a toss-up still, even as it leans Republican.
Of course, a lot of toss-ups still. I think it's going to be too close to tell with a lot of these states. Iowa is something worth noting, especially with the Selzer poll that came out.
Yeah, the Selzer poll really made waves over the weekend. Another one of these surprising moments coming into this race. Incredibly, she called the race by 3 points for Kamala Harris. There was like a 3% also margin for error. So we really don't know. But again, most of the population is over here in the Des Moines area. It speaks for itself. Kamala Harris is leading in the Des Moines metro area. There's a couple other population centers over this way that haven't reported in. So Iowa is still too early to call. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
But it does seem like the numbers are right now in favor of Vice President Harris.
Yes, but just 20% of the votes are in there. Georgia, President Biden took this in 2020. But right now, Trump is holding on to this very strongly with 2.2 million, and 79% of the vote is in.
And give Georgia credit. This was another one of these slow count states that actually made a big commitment to try to speed up their counting. It's actually impressive to see this number already. But still, the same story. You have to look at Atlanta, the Atlanta suburbs.
Yeah,
that's going to decide
County
this
right
election.
here.
Probably it's going to be the margins. And what we'll have to watch is how these margins change throughout the evening. The higher for Vice President Harris, the better in that area, whereas Donald Trump's lead holds in Georgia.
And Michigan was supposed to be called somewhat early, but they're slower to get their numbers in. In 2020, it went to Joe Biden, and right now just 14% are in, and you can see right now.
Well, and in Michigan, let's turn here to Wayne County. This is where the people live. This is the Detroit metro area between Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. This is really where we typically see the race falling in Detroit, whoever carries those 3 counties.
Yeah, and those Detroit typically, of course, going to Democrats typically. Now let's talk about the Senate race. We've been talking about this. But this could be a big night for Republicans in the Senate, especially with that Jim Justice win in West Virginia.
Yeah, it was a flip. It's just the one seat we can call right now. But as we may remember, the Senate has been tied for the last 2 years. Vice President Harris has been casting that tie-breaking vote for so many different votes. Of course, there are a couple independents in the Senate as well. So it really always sort of depends where folks end up caucusing on different issues. But as of now, this looks to be a major gain for the Republicans in the Senate.
And we will keep watching the House as well, but a lot of those numbers are not in, too close to call. So at this point, it's a little too early to look at those numbers. But of course, we'll keep watching this map, watching the balance of power for you all night long. Kara.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. I want to do a check-in on the 4th Congressional District right now. Representative Jim Hines is opposed by Republican Michael Goldstein. That district covers the southwestern portion of our state. So here's a look at the results that we have for you as of right now. Similar to the last time we showed you, Jim Hines is up a little bit more, 58% of the vote going to the incumbent Jim Hines. Michael Goldstein at 40%. And Benjamin Wesley much farther behind in the independent party with only 2%. Want to come back to our esteemed panel right now because I know you all chomping at the bit. You just got some new information that you're beating it into the newsroom. Tell everybody.
Okay, well, Themis just got the word that Representative Cara Rochelle, who represents a part of the Naugatuck Valley, we've been talking about the Naugatuck Valley here, I'm sure because we both love it, because Themis and I are both from the Naugatuck Valley, but Cara Rochelle...
Because we're all Valley.
Yes, we're Valley.
We are.
You're Valley people.
You're Valley
we
team,
are.
Kara.
Can't change it, but Cara Rochelle won her re-election, which I did think was going to be a tight race. We've been talking a lot about the Naugatuck Valley. We've been talking about Trump voters and them doing very well in the Route 8 corridor and throughout the Naugatuck Valley, but Cara Rochelle, state representative in Derby and Ansonia, did win tonight and upset and beat the mayor of Ansonia was running for that seat as a Republican, and Cara Rochelle did beat David Cassetti.
Well, the mayor of Ansonia is a 10-year mayor. In Ansonia, who wins by large margins, and it's just like literally you talk about knowing everybody's dog. I mean, he knows every person.
I gotta leave it right there. We've got 5 seconds, but you can watch the results streaming at the bottom of the screen. We'll be right back.
from Eyewitness News, this is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
It is 9:56 right now on a busy Tuesday night, election night. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Mark Zinni.
And I'm Erin Connolly. We are checking in on the race for Connecticut's 1st District. With 11% of precincts reporting, Representative John Larson is leading over his Republican challenger, Jim Griffin, and Green Party candidate Mary Sanders.
Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Aya Glal has been on top of this race for us for weeks now. She is joining us live with some new information tonight. Aya?
Hi, Mark and Aaron. Well, we are still waiting on those official results, but we're at Goodwin University right now in East Hartford. Take a look behind me here. This is where Congressman John Larson's team is watching the results come in. The atmosphere here very upbeat. People are feeling optimistic. U.S. Representative John Larson has been in Congress since 1998. He's currently serving his 13th term. You can see him taking photos here right now. I spoke with the congressman today. He says if reelected, his priorities will be getting Social Security enhanced and reformed. His Republican challenger is Jim Griffin. We heard from Representative Larson about how he's feeling.
Very confident. It's a great night for Connecticut. You know, Harris has already been declared, as has Murphy. All the results and numbers that we see coming in are overwhelmingly in favor of Democrats, so it's a great night for us.
So we will, of course, continue monitoring results very closely. For now, reporting live in East Hartford, Aya Glal, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Aya, thank you. Other results coming in right now, including for this race for Connecticut's 5th Congressional District. We've been watching this one for quite some time between Jahana Hayes and Republican George Logan. Right now, we have about 9% of the vote in. Jahana Hayes is up roughly 5,000 votes right there. But again, a lot of numbers still coming in tonight.
Now let's take a look at the 2nd District. You see it right here, our state's largest congressional district. Congressman Joe Courtney facing a challenge from Republican Mike France. This is a look at where things stand right now with 20% of precincts reporting. Joe Courtney with 53% of the vote.
Also keeping an eye on the Connecticut General Assembly races, a few of them. We have a look at the race here between Democratic State Senator Nick Simmons, and Republican Ryan Fazio for District 36. We have Simmons right there, 65% of the vote in. He has 51% right now.
Moving on to the House, State Representative Rachel Canna facing off against Republican challenger Tina Corpus with 71% reporting. Corpus, as you can see, is slightly in the lead. Now, in about 30 minutes from now, we will check in on the race for Connecticut's 4th District.
Yeah, a lot of these numbers just changing in real time right now, so you want to stay with us here on air and on the WFSB app.
Live from Eyewitness News, this is extended coverage of Campaign 2024 Election Night.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our extended coverage on the Wax and streaming here on WFSB Plus. We are with you until 11 o'clock as these results come in. I'm Kara Sundland. Tonight, we are your election authority, focusing on the local races that impact you and, of course, the presidential race and the balance of power. I'm joined by an esteemed panel of political analysts. First, we have Democrat Jimmy Tickey, and he is the vice chair of the Democratic Party. Then Republican Themis Claridis, an attorney and former House Minority Leader who was the highest-ranking woman in the legislature. Thank you for being with, and of course, columnist and senior editor at CT Insider, Dan Haar. Thank you, all of you, for being here as we continue our team coverage, and we're watching all of the individual races as we're now at this point at 10 o'clock Eastern time. And we've been telling everyone that we're going to have to keep waiting because, especially on the presidential side, there's some slow counts. But even here in Connecticut, I asked you at the beginning of the night, how do you see the night? I'm going to start with that question again. How are things now as we're into this, Themis?
Well, we have seen up until now that we have lost 2 Republican House seats. One, an incumbent in Stratford lost that we talked about earlier, and one, a seat of Charlie Ferraro, who represents West Haven and part of Orange. He retired, and the person that ran for his seat, Ray Collins, did not keep the seat.
Okay, and I want you all to be able to chime in as well, but Hector Molina is outside right now, and I want to join him because Hector has been covering the Rosa DeLauro race with Michael Massey. And Hector, I understand you have very long lines where you are still. Hector, can you hear me?
New Haven City Hall, yes, sorry about that, where the polls have, according to schedule, have closed for about 2 hours, but obviously, as long as people are in line, the polls will stay open. And there is still a pretty significant line here inside New Haven City Hall. A lot of these people, majority of these people here are registering for the same day voting, and a lot of people have been waiting in this line for quite some time, including these two Yale students here with Ronan and Bridget. Guys, thank you for being willing to speak with us. You know, tell us what brought you guys here and how long you've been waiting in line.
Well, I was in the library and I decided with 5 minutes to go I would sprint over out of principle and just get in a vote. Yeah, we've been here for like 2 hours, but yeah, it's all good fun, good experience.
And just what's it been like, you know, waiting 2 hours? I'm sure you were able, at first you thought you were going to sneak in right before 8 o'clock, but here we are almost 10 o'clock and here we are.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long time, but I don't know. I think it'll be worth it at the end of the day once we get the vote in. So,
has anyone come out to talk to you guys and tell you, you know, what's going on or trying to move the process along?
Yeah, they were good. They were pretty communicative and thankful that we came. A guy came around with some pizza. Bridget ordered some food. People are posted up. There's water. It's good vibes. Yeah.
And did people tell you once you registered to vote, you could cast your ballot here, correct?
Yeah.
That's what they told you, so you don't have to go anywhere else.
Yes.
That's good. At least you're waiting for the right thing. Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for speaking with us, and we're going to continue to work with about any polling issues and everything else going across the state. But for now, we're live in New Haven. Hector Molina, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Hector, thank you. And yes, at New Haven City Hall, that is the rule. If you get in line before 8 o'clock, they promise you will be able to vote. Interesting that they've got pizza and water. Let's now head out to Susan Raff. She's been in the 5th District where there's a rematch. The most contentious race we really have here that we're watching in Connecticut, Representative Johanna Hayes and Republican challenger George Logan. Susan, how's it going?
Kara, you are right about that. This is a hotly contested race, and I think people here in this room in Waterbury would like the race to be called. We saw that with Senator Murphy earlier tonight, and then just a few moments ago when it showed Hayes up against Logan, the crowd cheered, but we are still very early in the night. Only a few precincts are reporting. This is a fairly big district, the 5th District, and there are 41 towns here. So that gives you a sense of everyone is doing their best, hopefully, to count all those votes. We did have a chance to catch up with Congresswoman Johanna Hayes on her last day of campaigning, and here's what she had to say about these final hours.
I feel like I've done everything that I can, and now it's up to the voters. You know, we ran a good race, put the message out there, and I'm excited because everywhere I've gone in the district, there's a steady stream of voters showing up today. Early voting was great, so I'm just excited to see the results.
This is a hot race for two very important reasons. One, it was very close 2 years ago. Johanna Hayes obviously won, but only by some 2,000 votes. This is also a race that nationally Democrats are keeping a very close eye on because this seat could help them flip the House of Representatives. Democrats need 4 seats. So at this point, because of the fact that a lot of precincts are still not in, it is still too close to call. But people here are hoping that Johanna Hayes pulls off a victory tonight. One of the things that she is focused on in her campaign, obviously, is reproductive rights, and that is something that many Democrats here in Connecticut feel very strongly about. So we're going to throw it back to you, but we will bring you much more as soon as it's available, but still too early to call this race here tonight.
Susan, thank you so much, and I know we'll continue to focus on that angle with you, but I want to go out now as we cover the counterpart, because Matt McFarland has been covering the George Logan campaign, although things have changed there a little bit, because Matt, you mentioned he sort of broke with tradition. There is no party watching with supporters.
Absolutely. Usually you throw that party on election night for your supporters, all the volunteers who campaigned for you, worked for you. It's sort of a thank you as you sort of gather to watch those election results come in throughout the night. Logan Camp decided they weren't going to do that this year. They told Susan Raff earlier this week that they would throw a celebration when there was a victory in hand. Another thing that we heard from the camp earlier today was like, well, we don't even know if it's actually going to be decided tonight. So that were sort of the two things that they were dealing with. But we're here in New Britain at the Back Nine Tavern, where the local New Britain Republicans have been watching the race results come in, local, state, national as well. As for George Logan, he was crisscrossing the district throughout the day, starting early in the morning in Danbury, made it eventually ending here in New Britain as the polls closed at 8 o'clock tonight. He basically said that he thought this was a race that would come down to if you like the way the direction is going in this district, or if you're looking for change. You might remember 2 years ago he lost a razor-thin race to Jahana Hayes just by about 2,000 votes. This time he said he thought the campaign was going well. He was excited. He said he thought his message was resonating with voters in this large district. Sort of the key issues for him, inflation, jobs, also the border. So he said he was excited when we spoke to him right before the polls closing at 8, but he said now it's just going to come to see what those votes come in and to see if it's enough to get them over the finish line. We're live at the Mobile Newsroom in New Britain. Matt McFarland, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Matt, thank you so much. And well, certainly there's a lot of focus on the presidential race, and the balance of power, though, is something that we're watching on for Election Day for Congress. But at the state level, we've been talking about this with our analysts. There are a lot of races in both parties in the state legislature that we're keeping an eye on. And Chief Investigative Reporter Sam Smink is live in the studio with what we need to know, as things could shift here as well, Sam.
Well, in the state legislature, the Democrats have a majority in the House and Senate. While leaders in both parties agree that the majority is not likely to change, the majority in the Senate could become greater if Democrats win in 3 competitive races. One of those competitive races is taking place in the 8th State Senate District between incumbent Republican Lisa Seminara and Democrat Paul Honig. With 15% of precincts reporting so far, Lisa is up. This is a rematch from 2022. Last time, only 124 votes separated the two. Now, Democrats are hoping to flip a key state Senate seat in Greenwich, Stamford, and New Canaan. Incumbent Republican Ryan Fazio is running against Democrat Nick Simmons. Now, with 65% of precincts reporting so far, Simmons is in the lead. The seat went Democratic in 2018 after a century in Republican hands, but went back to Republican control in 2021 when Fazio was elected. Incumbent Republican Tony Wong is facing challenger Rob Blanchard. Right now, with 11% of precincts reporting, Wong is in the lead. His last 3 races were very close. Now, on the state House side, we did learn that Republicans have lost 2 seats, and Democrats are hoping to keep their seat in the 81st District of Southington. Incumbent Democrat Chris Poulos is running against Republican Jim Morelli. Representative Poulos won his seat by 1 vote in 2022. At last check, those votes have not come in. Those precincts have not been reporting there. A race that Republicans are hoping to overturn in the House is the race for representative in Torrington, where incumbent Deputy Speaker Michelle Cook faces a challenge from Republican Joe Canino. Right now, with 25% of precincts reporting, Canino is in the lead. We are watching these races closely, and we'll have more information as the night goes on. I wanted to also bring up the 149th House District in Greenwich and Stamford. Right now, Tina Corpus is slightly leading incumbent Rachel Khanna with 71% of precincts reporting. Sam Smink, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Okay, Sam, thank you so much. Lots to take in, but I know you're, depending on what the news was, I could see whether Jimmy Dickey or Themis Claridis was smiling. But as we hear this, what are you thinking of how things are going to shake out? We talked about trying to, if the Dems picked up enough seats to get a veto-proof majority. Themis, do you think that's not going to happen?
I can't see that happening in the House. It's been the concern in the Senate, but what we're seeing with Tony Wong being ahead, Ryan Fazio is behind now, but of course all results aren't in. So you know, it's with all the early voting now, I think you really have to wait till all the results are in. I think things could flip-flop in either direction.
Yeah, especially when we're seeing those margins. I mean, we're talking about less than 200 votes separating. We've been talking about that all night, about how the votes can be so different in local elections with such small margins.
These are AP results that she just was talking about, and we have AP on our home site, on our websites as well. some of what we've been talking about tonight is people giving us more updated, later results.
Okay.
So the Senate race between Tony Wong and Rob Blanchard, what we gave was more updated than what AP is reporting. So.
And your update, just in case people are joining us?
Well, our update was that Senator Wong's lead is holding up strongly. But that doesn't mean it's a done deal. 2 years ago it would have, but this year with 750,000 or 740,000 or 15 early votes, those could be Democrat.
Yeah.
So
especially just to let everyone know, also the biggest polling place in Torrington has shut down because of the tabulators not working, and they're going to hand count those. So that's a lot of votes.
Right. And with the early voting, it will take some time for all the early votes to be counted. But I'm optimistic about Nick Simmons in Lower Fairfield County, and that might have then that might play a role with the Rachel Khanna district, Representative Khanna. So the better that Nick Simmons does and lifts up that ticket, and if he wins and beats Senator Fazio, that also might help Rachel Khanna, who's a representative in a tougher race. And also to the earlier piece about New Haven. I mean, I was a campaign manager for Rosa DeLauro for many years, and that's not unusual that with so many students in New Haven, because we have same-day registration here in the state of Connecticut, that they can go down and they can register and vote on the same day. And if people are in line, they should stay in line and make sure that their voice is heard and that they vote.
Yeah, we heard that Yale student say that. Hey, I just got it on a whim, decided to go do it, and he wanted to vote.
That's
so good
right.
for them.
I mean, but to your Greenwich point, I mean, what we're seeing is Nick Simmons is ahead of Ryan Fazio at this point, but we're also seeing Tina Corpus, the nice Greek girl, is ahead of Rachel Khanna in Greenwich. So that's opposite parties. So we'll see what happens with that.
it's a C, isn't it spelled with a C?
That's irrelevant to the whole thing.
It
ends in an AS.
Okay, I thought it was a K if it's
Claritas.
Claritas, Corpus.
We
got the Greek theme
I
going.
thought it was like Moldavian.
It's the ending, not the beginning.
Okay, got it. How you end. Good.
How it ends, just like election night.
Just like election night. It's how it ends, not how it begins.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to go to Channel 3's Stephanie Simoni in the Campaign 2024 desk for an update. Couldn't be more true. It's how it ends, not how it begins. Right, Steph?
Yes. We have been looking at this map. Numbers are coming in from the West Coast. Actually, they just called Colorado for Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at that state. The numbers just came in. It was called very quickly, but this is expected, right?
Yeah, this one was expected. Again, Colorado, for the last several elections, has been an early call for Democrats. But here it is, 10 votes for Vice President Harris.
Yeah, and so many of these other Western states called for Trump very quickly. The numbers aren't even in, but they know that Montana will go to the Republican. What is very interesting, though, is that Arizona, those numbers are starting to come in. This is a battleground state, 47%, and right now it's very slim. I mean, she's up 16,000 votes with those votes in right now.
Yeah, thing to keep in mind, Arizona, this is one of those states like Nevada, heavy mail-in ballots. So this 47 is going to be what's already arrived, the early voting, and the votes in person. So this may be a little bit of a wait to get the full percentage, but it could get called before long.
And this is Professor Balsarski, by the way. You've probably been watching us throughout the night. He is our presidential historian with Eastern Connecticut State University. Also, something worth noting. I mean, let's look at the other battleground states right now. Wisconsin, a toss-up, Michigan. Interesting what's happening in Virginia right now, because this went solidly blue for Joe Biden in 2020, and then so talk to me about the numbers that we're seeing here. These are the cities that are coming in.
Virginia is an interesting case, and as we zoom out here from Arlington to the whole state, keep in mind that most of the population of Virginia is consolidated around the D.C. metro, with pockets in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, and Richmond. Harris has been catching up all night. That being said, we are at 64%, and she has not yet led. At this point, I would say, memory serves, Biden was ahead at this point in the night, but of course anything can happen 4 years later.
Yes, you have a good memory though, remembering that about Biden at 10 o'clock at night on election night. Let's take a look at Georgia. Trump doing very well here right now.
He really is. This is not saying this one's a runaway yet, but this is actually a much improved count. 82% is far above where they were 4 years ago. So we can be a little bit more sure where things are going. The lead has been actually widening just a little bit. Donald Trump is nearly 52% at this point in Georgia.
Well, and something else worth noting too is that Vice President Harris, she didn't spend a lot of time in Georgia, but where she did spend a lot of time is Pennsylvania. Those numbers, 50% of votes are in right now, and he is leading by 60,000 votes.
I mean, Pennsylvania is the toss-up of toss-ups, I'd say, as we kind of remember that Joe Biden's win, as we go back into it, was really right here. It's the margin in Philadelphia. With only 41% in, Biden was well over 80%, so this number would need to increase for Harris to have a healthier lead. But this is looking kind of like what we saw 4 years ago.
Now, Tom, I want to go back to the map. I think something just got called for Harris as we were chatting. Okay, 109. No, nothing got called. Okay.
It looks like maybe New Mexico moved to the lean category.
Okay, well, I saw something change in the map, so I wanted to make sure that we hit that.
I mean, at this point, the toss-ups are tossing up and the leans are leaning. But I would say the things we'll be watching will be Virginia for sure. We'll keep our eye on North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Minnesota has also come in for the first time. Again, we'll have to monitor how that one changes.
How did Minnesota go in 2020? Let's take a look.
This was Biden, and you have Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate, the current popular governor. This is expected to be a Democratic win in Minnesota, but as of now, Trump ahead.
All right, let's take a look at some of the balance of power right now, because we know that the Senate, obviously very important, the House. Let's take a look at those graphics. I know that one Senate seat was called, excuse me? Oh, we don't have it right now. Okay.
Well, one thing just for your viewers, check out the Arizona Senate race. I saw it looks like Ruben Gallego has been called for the Senate over Kerry Lake in Arizona. That is a pickup for the Democrats.
Okay, very interesting.
We'll watch to see when that gets confirmed by the different networks. But right now, that's the new one I saw. Is it looks like Gallego will win this Senate race in Arizona.
Okay, you're not the expert here, so I mean you are the expert. But in terms of we go with the AP, do you know if the AP?
It was an AP call.
Okay, all right. Well, there we go. Breaking news right now. Thank you so much, Professor. I appreciate it. Kara, back to you. We're breaking so much news right now on the national scale.
Yeah, well, we're going to continue to watch the balance of power. And as we've said, patience is the word of the evening, as so many of the early votes do have to get counted. We want to head out to the 2nd Congressional District race, where Democrat Representative Joe Courtney and Republican Mike France are competing for that seat. Channel 3's Luke Hydash is there with an update tonight. Luke, how's it going now?
Kara, good evening. Like much of Connecticut, we are in a bit of a holding pattern right now, a big waiting game for Joe Courtney and his campaign. We are told we should be hearing from the congressman in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. Many of his supporters and people who've worked on this campaign have been here in Norwich at his viewing party, at his watch party, waiting to hear from him. He has been out shaking some hands throughout the night, but we are expecting an announcement and small speech from him within the next 5 or 10 minutes. His challenger, Republican Mike France, is up 395 in Danielson. He's at the Elks Club there with his supporters tonight. This race has not been called yet. No official results are in, but a lot of optimism from the Courtney campaign, as we are expecting an announcement from him in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll, of course, update with you with what he says there. But for now, we're going to send it back to you, Kara.
Okay, thank you so much, Luke. And I believe now we're going to be going to Aya Galal, who is covering the Democratic Representative John Larson, who is as a challenger of Republican Jim Griffin. Aya, we know that Congressman Larson has been in office since 1998 and he definitely has enjoyed a comfortable lead. What is the mood where you are?
Hi, Kara. Yeah, Representative Larson, he's ready for his next cycle in Congress. Like you said, been in Congress since 1998. We're here at Goodwin University. We spoke with the congressman. He's feeling very confident, very optimistic as we're still waiting for those official results to come in. Let's give you a look at what it's looking like here at Goodwin University. This is where Representative Larson's team has been waiting for those official results to come in. He is up against Republican challenger Jim Griffin. Now, we did speak with Jim Griffin today. He tells us he used to be a Democrat, is now running as a Republican, hoping to defeat Representative John Larson, but that is not going to be an easy task. Representative Larson has served 12 terms now, looking to make it his 13th. Representative Larson tells us today that one of his big priorities is improving and enhancing Social Security. He says he wants to continue working on that in Congress if reelected. So we are still waiting for those official results to come in. Some people have now left the party as it is getting a little bit later in the night, but we will stay here. We will be on top of those results, and we'll have another live report coming up throughout the night. For now, reporting live in East Hartford, Aya Galal, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Aya, thank you so much. And we're going to be checking back in with you. We do have to take a quick break, but we're gonna actually, we get some time to do some analysis. This is fun. Okay, so let's as we're watching the AP start to make more of these calls, What you had some predictions earlier. I don't know if you'll go out and say them, but there's some thoughts about what you think is going to happen with the balance of power nationally. Themis, let's start with you.
Well, I think the Republicans will take control of the Senate, and the Democrats will keep control of the House by a small margin.
Jimmy?
Yes, well, Democrats don't have the House right now. Mike Johnson has the gavel.
I meant take control.
Yes, so but I do
Thank
agree.
you.
I do agree with Themis.
You think that Dems are going to take the House?
Democrats will take the House of Representatives tonight or this
And
week, whenever we know the
results.
results.
Republicans will take.
I think the Republicans will take the Senate, Democrats take the House, and the Speaker of the House will be Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay. Dan Hardy, want to weigh in
well,
on
no,
that?
I mean, we know the Senate is almost entirely likely to go Republican, although Senator Tester in Montana had something go his way with a problem with his challenger that came up about a lie that he made. So there's hope there, but it's a question of the House, and it's going to be awfully close. So I'll go with the unanimous prediction of the House going Democrat.
And remember, because we rotate the Senate races, right, the senators that run, and 2 years from now, I think it'll be a little more difficult for the Republicans in keeping their Senate majority if they win it tonight, but that's a bridge for the future.
Especially if it's a midterm for Trump.
Right.
Okay, so we will continue to see what happens. And let me ask you about that for the Trump factor, especially for Republicans running here in states that have been traditionally blue or other places. How does that factor in for the Republican Party? And you were saying often it's the number one question people get asked. Well, where do you stand on Trump? Would you vote for Trump? Certainly you've been asked that.
And, you know, and it's the number one question oftentimes, and there's only one right answer, right? Like when you're asked as a candidate and you're asked that question, you know that there's only one answer they want you to give. It's either, I think he's great, or I think he's terrible. Because depending on what town you're in, what part of the state you're in, they either love him or they hate him. Okay. And so that affects the people that are running there. That's why you have more pro-Trump candidates, say in eastern Connecticut or in lower Naugatuck Valley, and then you have more anti-Trump candidates, say in Fairfield County and more affluent areas in New Haven, Hartford County, et cetera.
We're going to leave it there. We got to take a quick break.
Eyewitness News. This is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Channel 3. It is 10:26 on a very busy election night. Good evening. I'm Erin Connolly.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Zinni. We do want to turn right now to the race for Connecticut's 2nd Congressional District, our state's largest district right here on the map. Representative Joe Courtney is actually speaking right now in Norwich, and I believe we can listen in live.
Also from the city of Norwich, we're also part of that effort to again transform what really had been sort of a non-productive property into now a new destination. And right around the corner, the YMCA building, same thing. The American Rescue Plan is allowing that building, which had been neglected and disused for many, many years now, into mixed-use, commercial, and residential. We again have done, other projects with the city of Norwich and a lot of the other folks that were recipients of that once-in-a-generation infusion that came from a Democratic majority in March of 2021 when the American Rescue Plan was passed without a single Republican vote. The folks that are up here have also worked hard in terms of the veterans in eastern Connecticut, which again has the highest concentration of the 5 congressional districts. Passing the PACT Act in 2021 has resulted in over 10,000 new.
All right, you're listening live to Representative Joe Courtney on election night. Channel 3's Luke Hydash is with the Courtney campaign, and he will have an update on Eyewitness News at 11.
Another big story right now, the line is moving again in the Elm City after some voters had to wait more than 2 hours after polls closed to cast their ballot.
Let's get right out to Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Hector Molina. He is live in New Haven tonight. And Hector, we know you spoke to some of those voters.
Yeah, Aaron, the line is actually wrapped up now, but that wasn't the case a few minutes ago. I mean, there were several dozen people here in City Hall 2 hours after the election locations have closed, after the polls have closed. But as we know here in Connecticut, as long as you're in line, you can still vote, and your vote will matter. Now, a lot of people were here on the 2nd floor. They came right here to this room to register to vote, and then they were able to go across the hall to cast their ballots. And you can still see some of those workers right here still tallying up the final votes. Now, we did speak with a spokesperson from the mayor's office who said they had over 1,000 people same day registering to vote. That he couldn't speak as to how many people they had last year, but said that's the most people they've had in quite some time. That's the latest here in New Haven. Hector Molina, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Hector, thank you very much.
The news continues tonight on Eyewitness News at 11.
Live from Eyewitness News, this is extended coverage of Campaign 2024 Election Night.
Welcome back, everyone, to our special extended coverage here on the Wax and on WFSB Plus. We want to head back out as we're covering all the local races with our analyst for you. I'm Kara Sundlin. I want to go right now because Joe Courtney is still addressing the crowd live from his election headquarters. Let's listen in.
Instrument that is going to drive and continue to drive hiring and employment in this region. We want to extend the benefits of the prescription drug law, which has lowered drug costs for Medicare and Medicare recipients by 40 to 80%. We want to extend that to working age Americans. So again, it's going to be an opportunity, if things go the right way in terms of the final results that will unfold, as I said, later this evening or over the coming days. So I want to end by, first of all, thanking our amazing campaign team, which came together to do the field work, the voter contact, getting information out to folks. My campaign manager, Grace Brangwin, who's you can raise your hand, Grace, for the great work that you did. Our field organizer and data geek, Adam Richardson, who again was tireless in terms of his efforts. And the field team, which was Lindsay Del Brito, Evan Boissonneau, Chris Brown, and Jennifer Crowell. All of them just did an outstanding job.
All right, we're going to come back here now to do a little analysis. We're hearing Joe Courtney speak in the 2nd District race as we watch many of the races here in Connecticut tonight. The 5th has really been the most contested. And given everything you've seen tonight, especially with what's happening in Torrington, where we've had some polling irregularities and one of the biggest polling station the Army had to close down, what do you guys think about how the night is going so far and what we're in for as far as when we're going to know anything?
Well, I do think we're in for a long night and probably a couple of days ahead. This is the first time that we've had early voting here in Connecticut, so it's the first time for this as election poll workers will be counting those early votes. We had 740,000 people who voted early and over 100,000 absentee ballots. But I'm optimistic in the 5th Congressional District with Congresswoman Hayes. I think she really ran a great field effort, was all over the district, had a really strong campaign, and I'm optimistic about the numbers that are coming in and that will continue to come in throughout the 5th Congressional District. She really owned the ground in the game, and 2 years ago, it was tight. 1,800 votes is nothing in a congressional race, but I think she really built upon that and worked really hard. And as we had noted earlier, when you have funding that's being removed from your campaign, as George Logan saw in the last couple of weeks with national Republicans pulling away from him, and I saw a groundswell of support for Jahana Hayes, I'm optimistic that she'll be winning tonight in the 5th Congressional District.
Demis, what do you think about how the night is going to progress?
Well, we've seen what's happening in Torrington, and we're not going to see the largest polling place votes in for a while. And that's, as we've also mentioned, has moved much more Republican. So I think that would be a benefit to George Logan. So again, it's not how we start, it's how we end. And there's a lot of votes to be counted before anybody should consider this a done deal.
You were out doing campaign conversations, Dan Haar. We did that, you know, throughout on our Eyewitness News Evening News. What were some of the most surprising things you heard? I know sometimes you actually look surprised with what voters told you.
To me, the biggest surprise was how big an issue immigration is. And I had, you know, we all know intellectually, we all know in our heads, it's a big issue nationally because the Republicans have nationally made it a big deal. But the degree to which people on Albany Avenue in Hartford and on Main Street in Southington and you know, in every town I went to, people are concerned about immigration, in part for some of the wrong reasons and some of the right reasons, right? There's a belief that there's this massive crime wave that isn't happening, but on the other hand, there is concern about people coming in undocumented, and that is a concern. So that's the biggest surprise I found, and I would say overwhelmingly that was a bigger issue. I didn't hear the word Ukraine in 6 days, covering 6 cities all day I didn't hear the word Ukraine.
Okay. Well, we're going to go out to one of your partners in campaign conversations, which is our chief political reporter, Susan Raff. And she is covering Jahana Hayes in the 5th District. How's it going there? Anything? And I'll ask you the same question, Susan. What's going on there right now, and anything that surprised you the most when you were out there covering all the campaign conversations?
Hi, Kara. I was listening to what Dan Haar said, and I agree. I don't think I heard anything about Ukraine, and in fact, I didn't hear too much about what's happening in the Middle East with Gaza, but we did hear a lot about immigration, the economy, taxes, and reproductive rights. And when it comes to reproductive rights, I think that's what Jahana Hayes is hoping, that people in the 5th District will be loyal to her for that one reason. You know, it's codified into law in our state's constitution. People here in Connecticut feel very strongly about that. But one of the things that we found out here on the campaign trail earlier today is that there are people out there who don't know George Logan. Actually, in the Waterbury area, we asked several people at the voting location. We were at Crosby High School. People weren't exactly sure who he was. However, that's not indicative of the district as a whole. In fact, as you know, George Logan did pretty well against Jahana Hayes 2 years ago and lost by only some 2,000 votes. He has pulled money out of this race, or I should say the national Republicans have pulled money out to the race, but we are told that he was fundraising up until this last minute, the last few hours here today. We do know that Jahana Hayes has been advertising. She has spent about $1 million more than Logan, so she did take this race very seriously, and we should, because this is a very contentious district. It is purple in some areas, and I think what Jim Tickey brought out is very true because of early voting, for example. That's an issue. It may take a long time to count some of those ballots, but people were very excited here when they heard that, you know, Senator Murphy had been declared the winner. You can hear they're watching television behind me. Courtney had been declared the winner. And so there was a lot of excitement here, and people were really hoping that Jahana Hayes' race would be called. But at this point, it has not, and people here in this room are hoping that it does not go very late. But I think because of early voting, I think because there are 41 towns in the 5th District, it could take a while. So this could go very late. So we're going to throw it back to you and continue our coverage, and I'm sure we will check back with you soon.
Absolutely, Susan. I know our team is saying that they see couches here in our studio and they're happy to stay on them because it's going to be a late night. So, Susan, thank you so much. If you're having an election party, I definitely would say bring out some more food because nobody thinks this is ending soon. We're going to go to Channel 3's Stephanie Simoni at the big board. She's at our very cool presidential board as she can just touch the screen behind her and presto changeo, we get a lot of information.
I didn't even have to touch it that time, Kara. You know, of course, we've been watching this map very closely. We are here with our presidential historian. And right now, of course, they need 270 to win. That is the road to the win. And if you are a Trump supporter right now, you are very happy with what you're seeing. However, Harris supporters should not get too nervous yet, as those cities have not yet reported. So it's still anyone's game, still very early, of course. The white you see here, these are toss-ups. The light blue leans and or the light blue, pink leans, and then the called are the darker shades. I want to talk about what's happening to our neighbors to the north. New Hampshire, Maine, very interesting what we're seeing here. 57% of the votes are in, and it's leaning toward Harris, but it hasn't been called yet like other northeastern states. What do you think is happening here?
Well, this is New Hampshire. This was going to be closer for sure. It is expected to end up in the Harris camp. That being said, the last time New Hampshire went for a Republican was back in 2000. So this would be a big shift if it went for Donald Trump. We would want to focus on the large population here in Hillsborough County, the cities of Manchester and Nashua. And Harris's lead in this county suggests that is likely how the state is going to break.
And I have something also, another state I wanted to go to, Maine. They have, it's interesting there, when you see these little ones with the circles, the two, this means that they actually split their electoral votes. Something that Nebraska also does. Just 2 states do this, right?
That's right. Maine and Nebraska leading the way in what might be the future of the Electoral College for now. Just these 2 states. You'll see it on the screen as D1 and D2. These are typically one an urban area near Portland and the other the large northern, mostly unpopulated part of the state that has its own county. We can only really look at county level elections here, but Cumberland County, this is the one to watch. This is Portland area at 14%. It's why the Harris team probably thinks they have a chance here, and it looks right now to be going her way.
Very interesting. And, you know, if we still have a lot to come in. Arizona. 49% right now. Interesting because the polls just closed there relatively recently. So we're seeing Trump leading it, but not by a lot, just about 1,000 votes. I mean, this is going to be close.
This is Maricopa County. See if we can find it here. We're just checking it out. For those who remember, these names come up once every 4 years. Maricopa County is likely going to side this election. Look at this margin. It's razor thin. How this breaks, likely Arizona will go to.
And because of these split states, Nebraska splitting their electoral college votes, Maine splitting their electoral college votes, you said there is a possibility of a tie in electoral college votes.
Is it midnight yet? Are we talking about a tie yet?
What happens in that situation, that scenario?
First of all, let's remember there's a lot of votes to be counted, and there's a lot of math to be mathed. That being said, there is a way in which the college does break with an exact tie. We've never seen an exact tie before, so it would be unprecedented ground. However, what we understand constitutionally would mean the House of Representatives would decide this thing on a state, one vote, 50 states, 50 votes. If there's a tie, which could happen, someone would break the tie, and that would be the vice president.
And that would be unprecedented, correct?
Yes, it would.
Like everything in this election in the past couple of years. Unprecedented. That seems to be the word that keeps coming up. Let's take another look at some of these toss-ups here. Michigan, this was predicted to be called early. In 2020, it went Democratic. Only 23% of the votes are in here, and we're still waiting on numbers from Detroit, correct?
I mean, Wayne County. The fact that Wayne County right now is showing a Trump lead shows just how many votes are. This is a solidly Democratic Democratic district. This is the Detroit metro area. But Oakland County, which has been another bellwether, and Macomb County are changing. But for the first time, I'm seeing now, actually, Vice President Harris leading in Macomb. This is the traditional bellwether for the state of Michigan.
Interesting, interesting. So we will obviously keep watching that. Still a lot of votes to be called in, something that probably, at least a lot of experts are saying, it will not be called tonight.
Probably not, and we're running out of daylight here.
Yes, we are. People like to go to bed, usually around 1 or 2 in the morning. That's my experience with election night. Oh, I think something just, this just got called. Iowa just got called for Trump, which was, so Seltzer was wrong.
Yeah.
This Seltzer poll was wrong.
Let's pour out a seltzer for Seltzer's career. She went out on a limb on this one. I was skeptical too, and I mean, here it is. It's called for Trump.
Yep, which, I mean, was anticipated. In 2020, let's take a look at went to Trump too. So, yeah. All right, so of course we will keep watching this map as the night rolls on. We are watching the balance of power in the Senate, as that is still up in the air at this point, as well as the House. The House, so many seats in the House haven't been called, including the 5th district right here in Connecticut. So, Kara, we're going to toss it back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hang on for a second, guys. I know you got stuff to say, but right now we want to talk about any of the problems that have been going on throughout the day. We've asked all of you to call us here in the newsroom, to email us. One issue could linger past Election Day. Investigative reporter Cassidy Williams joins us to explain, as she has been investigating your reports tonight. Cassidy.
Kara, this is an issue we first told you about on Sunday, and now the Secretary of State says it's possible what happened in North Stonington could lead to a lawsuit. More than 1,000 early voting ballots were potentially not signed. Voters were asked to come back to make sure their ballot was properly filled out. There are around 200 people who did not come back, but there is not yet a final number on how many people's votes may not count. This is something the state says they will be looking into over the coming days, and we will continue to follow this as well. Kara.
All right, Cassidy. Cassidy, thank you so much. I want to bring in our analyst right now because we've got some time where we can really dive in. We're hearing from the national perspective. We just saw Iowa get called. I just want to bring in because I know you're focusing on Connecticut. However, you also have a lot of knowledge about what's been going on. And let's just talk about Iowa. The big poll that came out showing Harris was going to be ahead turned out to be wrong. We just got Iowa called for Trump. Did that surprise you, Themis?
The fact that it showed she was ahead in the first place was kind of a little bit of a unicorn, since either one of them had been there, and it was a little bit of a surprise to everybody. So it's not really a surprise that he won it, because it would be a state that he would win.
Okay, and he did win in 2020. But both of you have a lot of experience watching Northern Virginia, and that can be a bellwether for the presidency, especially if you're going to be a Democrat. You need to really do well in Northern Virginia. So that's what, every time I see the board, you guys are really focusing on Northern Virginia. Right. Can you explain that to our viewers?
Because Northern Virginia is where a lot of government workers are, where it's a different education level, that kind of thing. So if the Democrat is not winning in Northern Virginia, then that tells you a lot.
Right, you got to win in certain areas, right? You don't have to win everywhere, but you have to win in particular places where every past Democratic president has won. You want to win there, and you also, people are taking a look at how much you're winning by. People are looking at the Clinton numbers versus the Biden numbers. How well is Harris doing in comparison to those? And in places you're going to lose, because you can't win everywhere, you want to try to mitigate those losses, so that if you're losing a town or a county, can you mitigate those losses and make it up elsewhere?
Well, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, just to catch the viewers up with the chatter at the table when we're down, is Virginia is a relatively fast counter. And as I recall, in 2016, Virginia going for Trump was really the early harbinger of his win. It wasn't over at that point, but it was like everything at that point was a matter of waiting. And likewise, the margin in cities really matters. When we see 78% for Harris in Philadelphia, that's a warning sign.
Meaning that she needs to be in the
more than
80s.
She needs to be over 80. Right, and so these are the types of things that we're looking at.
So just keep in mind, in 2020, we went until Saturday morning until we got the presidential results. So it does take time Pennsylvania's slow, and so this might take some time to really see what we're working with.
So, but let me ask you, at this stage in the game, is this what you expected, or would you have thought that Harris would be doing better by now, or this is about what you expected?
Honestly, well, she needed to do better is the point of the story, if she's going to win.
Well, it's so much
in certain
outstanding.
areas.
So much is outstanding. I mean, every poll had it neck and neck, and that's what you had to believe, that every single poll had it neck and neck. There was no poll that had anyone well ahead, and we knew this was really a ground game, and we still have so many of the votes that are out. So obviously we need to be doing well in the places that we need to do well in, and see if she's on track for the Biden numbers of 2020, or if she's off by that, where is she making that up?
Thomas, we're talking about that a lot will depend. I mean, we know that we're getting some record turnout, and the question was who turned out. Was it a lot of women? Women tended to vote for Harris. As you're watching these early returns and the analysis come in on the boards, are you getting any thoughts or pictures about where this turnout went?
Well, it's about, as we talked about, who turned out, but who didn't turn out, right? So it's just as much both sides. And I would imagine if Harris is doing as well as she needs to do, and to our conversation, use Pennsylvania as a great example. If you're not winning a city like Philadelphia by a large amount, you can afford that's we may not find out till Saturday or another day, but that's a trend, right? It's a trend in a direction she doesn't want to go in. And so you need to win the cities and the places that you are the strongest by a lot to counteract the places that you are weaker. And so that's where we find trends. And if she's not doing that, then that's not a good trend for her.
And she needs to win the Latino vote by a whole lot, especially in the Northeast, because of the comments at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden, which has riled up the Puerto Rican community. I spoke with Miguel Cardona, the U.S. Education Secretary, who was in his hometown of Meriden today, talking about he was just in from Pennsylvania. And he's saying that the Puerto Rican communities in Pennsylvania are charged up. That may be from a standpoint of the leaders, but if they're charged up and don't turn up, it doesn't help her.
Okay. And we just heard that in Michigan, that Trump is winning with Latinos like 65-35. That's a huge trend.
So we will see what happens.
In this direction.
We'll see what happens. Right now, I'm just going to move on over back to Luke Hydash, who has been covering in southeastern Connecticut what's going on there. We want to check in as you cover the second congressional district race. Luke?
Kara, good evening. Joe Courtney just finished speaking to his supporters and people who worked on his campaign over the last few months here in Norwich. And he didn't exactly outright declare victory, but he did say the way things are looking right now, with the way that the polls are coming in, or the results are coming in, that things are looking good for the Courtney campaign, and he is confident in a win. I did just hear from the Mike France campaign up in Danielson not long ago, and they tell us we are going to continue to track returns as they come in. It is too early to know one way or the other, but I expect Joe and I will speak before the night is out. That is from Mike France, the Republican challenger for the 2nd Congressional District, from his watch party up 395 in Danielson at the Elks Club there. Again, Joe Courtney very confident with the results that have come in so far tonight. It looks like a Joe Courtney win according to his campaign, and he is confident in a win, but no outright declaration of a winner yet, and the AP has not called this race either. That is the latest in Norwich. Luke Hydash, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Luke, thank you so much. We're going to be checking back in, I know, on Eyewitness News at 11. Stay with us as more results come in. We got about 2 minutes left of our special streaming program. Thank you all for being here. And I know, Dan, you have something that you'd like to chime in about, something you just got information on.
Yes, our reporter Andy Bly in Greenwich is reporting that even though the AP count is a little behind, still at 7,000, and has Nick Simmons ahead in the 36th. That's the Senate seat in Greenwich, New Canaan, and Stamford, crucial seat. Fazio has pulled ahead, according to Greenwich Republicans, 53% to 47%. Still a lot of outstanding votes, but that does include some hand-counted early votes. So it's, he's pulled back ahead. So
okay.
That's
Themis?
And, staying with Greenwich, we have a first-term Democrat that seems to have lost to newcomer Tina Corpus. Did I mention she was Greek?
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And so I think it's interesting that we originally saw with the AP that Ryan Fazio was behind. And then once we got Tina Corpus's numbers, they both seem to have moved up, so consistently.
We should say he's the Republican.
Okay, well, so Jimmy, can you sum it up for us as far as where things are going? I know we still got to count everything. We've got, especially with Torrington shut down from some of these, we got a hand count now. But as far as where Connecticut is leaning locally,
right, I would say first, be patient. We have a long way to go to count all the early votes that came in to really understand where these races are at. You're hearing that some candidates are up based on the election day votes, but that may not include the early votes, which are sizable in a lot of communities. So we're seeing, Republicans maybe pulling ahead in some of the races, but also Democrats having a good night. It sounds like in Stratford, Milford, part of the Naugatuck Valley. And we're still waiting on pieces of the 5th Congressional District to come in, but I'm in touch with the Hayes campaign, and they're taking a look and seeing how they compared versus 2 years ago. And there is optimism there, and I too am optimistic about Jahana Hayes' chances in the 5th Congressional District. But again, it's a long night and days ahead to really understand where are those early votes and how does this stack up.
Okay, less than 30 seconds. Themis, is there any trend that you're seeing? We're talking about trends nationally,
right.
but any trend you're seeing in Connecticut?
Well, we've seen in the House, as we mentioned in the beginning of this program, that the numbers are looking like they're going to stay almost the same, maybe 1 or 2 members either way. We're looking at the Senate and similar. We're seeing of the 3 targeted races, all 3 of them look like they're going to hold their seats. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of change in the House and the Senate in any substantive way.
Okay. Dan Haar, Themis Claridis, and Jimmy Tickey, thank you so much, all of you. This has been our extended election coverage. We want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank all of you. I know we're going to continue and bring you in for some analysis when Eyewitness News at 11 begins. But we appreciate you being here. Dan, I'll let you have one last word, too, and if you can keep it less than 20 seconds.
I'm not so sure about that House. It takes 3 or 4, no, I think it's 4 seats to go to a veto-proof majority, and that's something to watch. I know you're confident, but I'm not so sure about that.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Democrats can win. Democrats can win a couple more seats.
Okay,
right,
we'll
and
see.
we can keep ours.
The counting's going to continue. We've got comfortable couches here. I hope you will settle in. Eyewitness News at 11 will be coming up. We've got much more of your election coverage right here on WFSB and the Wax. I'm Kara Sundlin. Good night for now.
Eyewitness News. This is a Campaign 2024 Election Night Update.
It is 10:56 on a busy election night, and we appreciate you staying with us here on Channel 3. I'm Erin Connolly.
And I'm Mark Zinni. We are giving you one more check right now on the local races we're following right before Eyewitness News at 11.
And the first race called tonight in Connecticut was the only statewide race. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy declaring victory, beating out Republican challenger Matthew Corey and two third-party candidates.
We've also been following some problems at the polls throughout the day. One major issue in North Stonington may actually stretch on for at least a few more days. More than 1,000 early voting ballots were potentially not signed. Voters were asked to come back to make sure their ballot was properly filled out, but about 200 people could not be found and didn't come back. The state will now be looking into how many people's votes may not have counted.
There were long lines in New Haven as well after the polls closed this evening. We talked with voters waiting overtime to vote. Benny said they were doing same-day registration, and they were in line by that crucial 8 p.m. cutoff, and the lines lasted until about 10 o'clock.
Now, some results just keep coming in throughout the night, including for this race, Connecticut's 5th District, the hotly contested rematch between Johanna Hayes and Republican George Logan. Right now, 25% of the vote is in here. Last time, there was just a 2,000 vote difference here, but Johanna Hayes is holding a lead right now, but obviously they are still counting ballots.
And let's take a look in Fairfield County in the 4th District. Democrat Jim Himes facing Republican challenger Michael Goldstein and independent candidate Benjamin Wesley with 44% of precincts reporting Himes is currently in the lead. And let's take a look at the 3rd District. Democrat Rosa DeLauro facing off against Republican Michael Massey. Congresswoman DeLauro in the lead with 18% reporting.
Now, over in the 2nd District, our state's largest congressional district, Congressman Joe Courtney faced a challenge from Republican Mike France. Here is where things stand right now with about 38% of the vote in. Congressman Courtney is holding a lead right there with 56% of the vote.
And let's take a quick look at the other congressional races we are following as we wait for those results to come in. In the 1st District, Representative John Larson is being challenged by Republican Jim Griffin and Green Party candidate Mary Sanders. Larson is leading with 17% reporting. Channel 3 is your election authority, and coming up on Eyewitness News at 11, we have team coverage with reporters all across the state. Things are changing minute by minute, and we have got you covered. Stay with us for updates on all the big races locally and beyond.
Yeah, this is really changing by the minute. For up-to-date results on all the races we're on top of, make sure you download the WFSB app.